The incident happened on the day I left home for a 2-day trip to attend a memorial service. As I returned home after the service, I heard someone crying from inside the house. Rushing in, I found my grandson Robert sitting alone in the middle of a hot room, crying. "Where are Dad and Mom?" I asked. "They went somewhere with Betty." Robert sobbed. He is only 3 years old and can't go to the bathroom by himself yet. His small body was dirty, and seeing him in such a pitiable state, I couldn't help but hug him. Leaving their child alone for such a long time like this is practically a crime. I was already furious at this point, but I needed to know what they were thinking, so I called my son David. After a while, he finally picked up the phone. "Hello? What? Is the memorial service over already? Where are you guys right now?" "Huh? Now? I'm on a trip with Emma and Betty. Since Mom's away, we thought we'd take some family time to relax." To my astonishment, he had gone on a trip to a tourist destination far from home, leaving Robert behind. And it was for 4 days. At that moment, I realized for sure. David and his wife Emma no longer had any sense of responsibility as Robert's parents. They were careless, had no guilt about what they were doing, and that wasn't changing even at that moment. Hearing their insensitive words, my anger reached its peak. I didn't want to be at the mercy of my son and his wife any longer. To protect him, I decided to end this cohabitation. I hung up the phone without saying a word. I would take care of everything before David and Emma returned. A few days later, they would be surprised. The locks on the house were changed, and they couldn't get inside. "The locks won't open! What's going on?" My enraged son and his wife called me, not knowing the retribution that awaited them. My name is Kate. A few years ago, I lost my husband to illness and lived alone for a while, but now I live with my son David, his wife Emma, and my grandchildren Robert and Betty, the 5 of us together. Originally, my son and his family lived separately, but 6 months ago, David suddenly contacted me. "Mom, I'm worried about you living alone. How about moving in together?" And said. So, they quickly moved into my house, and here we are. Even when my husband was alive, and after he passed away, David rarely visited or contacted me, so I didn't understand why he suddenly wanted to move in with his wife and kids. But indeed, I did have concerns about being alone in case something happened, so I accepted his offer. David had actually been married to another woman in the past. We didn't have much opportunity to talk, but she was a beautiful and delicate-looking woman. I was shocked when David told me that she had cheated, leading to their divorce. Robert, born from him and his ex-wife, ended up being raised by David. Raising a child as a single father isn't easy, and I worried whether David, who didn't seem particularly reliable, could properly care for Robert. But soon after the divorce, he met Emma and quickly remarried, which was a relief. Before long, Betty was born. Currently, my son and his wife have 2 children, 3-year-old Robert and 1-year-old Betty, making them a family of 4. Robert and Betty are both bright and friendly, calling me grandma and eagerly telling me things. Their pure, sparkling eyes and excited voices are so beautiful and dazzling. The presence of my grandson and granddaughter healed my lonely heart after losing my husband. Both of them are truly adorable and incredibly precious to me. But right now, I have a significant problem that I cannot ignore. It's about the way David and Emma treat Robert. As I mentioned earlier, Robert is David's son from a previous marriage and has no blood relation to Emma. Perhaps because of that, Emma dotes on her own daughter Betty while clearly being cold toward Robert. When Betty cries, Emma rushes to comfort her, but she ignores Robert and won't even make eye contact with him. I understand that it's a difficult situation for Emma to be in as a stepmother, so initially, I thought time would heal things. However, no matter how much time passes, her attitude toward him does not improve at all. In fact, recently, even David, who is Robert's biological father, has started to only show affection for Betty, just like Emma. Now, I am the only one standing up for him, and although he doesn't say it, he looks visibly lonely. Sometimes, I catch him looking enviously at Betty, who gets all the attention from David and Emma. At 3 years old, he still needs his parents' love and attention, but they won't give him any. He hasn't done anything wrong, but he doesn't know how to react to such treatment. Yet, Robert never complains. Dad and Mom are busy taking care of Betty. That's what he says to me, never showing any sign of his sadness. It's frustrating not being able to do anything for him. Additionally, I have another issue with Emma. She doesn't work and is a stay-at-home mom, but she doesn't help with any household chores. She spends every day idly at home, doing nothing. Cooking, cleaning, laundry. I handle all the household chores while she just watches TV or plays with her smartphone. She even leaves all of Robert's care to me and doesn't bother to drop him off or pick him up from daycare. Even though she is supposed to be Robert's mother, she acts as if he doesn't exist. David indulges Emma and never says anything to her. As a result, her behavior has escalated, and she has become more arrogant, lounging around the house with an air of superiority. I didn't want to become a meddling mother-in-law, so I endured it, but it got to the point where I couldn't take it anymore, and my anger exploded. I tried to have a conversation with her. Whoever can handle the household chores should do them. It's only natural that I can't love Robert since we aren't related by blood. Kate, you should be happy you get to take care of your adorable grandson, right? She justified herself. In the end, the conversation was meaningless. Since that discussion, my relationship with Emma has deteriorated further, and her attitude toward Robert and me has worsened. She insults us and makes snide remarks at every opportunity, making life even harder for Robert and me. Once, when Robert was crying, she yelled at him, "I wish someone like you had never been born." Even if they aren't blood related, it's something a mother should never say to a young child. I couldn't forgive Emma for this, nor David for doing nothing about it, but I endured it for Robert's sake. Until that day. One day, I had to leave home for 2 days to attend a memorial service at my parents' house. When I told David about it, "Okay," he said and went back to sleep. "Emma, have a good time," she said sarcastically while continuing to play with her smartphone. Despite my lingering worries about how David and Emma would treat Robert, I thought they wouldn't neglect him completely while I was away. "Well, please take care of Robert and Betty." I told David and Emma this and then returned to my parents' house. Then the incident happened. When I got home after the memorial service, I heard someone crying from inside the house. I hurried in and found Robert sitting alone in the middle of a hot room, crying. "Where is Dad and Mom?" I asked. "They went somewhere with Betty," Robert replied, sobbing. Looking at the table, I saw snacks and bread scattered around. It seemed that David and Emma had left them, and Robert had been trying to satisfy his hunger with them. For Robert, who couldn't prepare food on his own, this was the only food he could reach by himself. It must have been tough for him to spend the whole day with just this. Moreover, Robert is only 3 years old and cannot go to the bathroom by himself. His small body was dirty, and I couldn't help but hug him, feeling sorry for him. After bathing Robert and cleaning him up, I quickly prepared a warm meal for him. Seeing the food, Robert looked extremely happy and began to eat eagerly, looking relieved. "It's delicious, thank you." He smiled at me, and I felt relieved seeing him. "Take your time, you don't have to rush," I told him gently, thinking about what to do next. What I understood at that moment was that David and Emma had left Robert alone and gone somewhere. They must have taken Betty with them. It was clear that they had deliberately left him behind. I deeply regretted my leniency. Even if they usually treated him coldly, I never thought they would leave their own child alone for a long time like this. This could be considered a crime. This incident might cause Robert to develop a fear of being alone in the future. David and Emma probably couldn't even imagine that they had inflicted a permanent scar on their child's heart. Leaving Robert in the living room after he finished eating, I went into my room, closed the door, and locked it so that Robert wouldn't hear, and called David. What on earth was going on? Why did they leave Robert alone and go out? Where were they now? By this point, my anger was already exploding, but I tried to ask calmly what they were thinking. When I called, the usual loud music played. David's ringtone was by an artist I didn't recognize at all. I always thought it was inappropriate for a grown man to have such a ringtone, and in this situation, it only fueled my anger. After a while, David finally picked up the phone, sounding very annoyed. Hello? What? The memorial service is over already? He asked nonchalantly. Trying hard to keep my voice steady, I responded bluntly. I finished and came back home. Robert was left alone and was crying. David laughed as he heard that. Oh, really? He managed to stay home alone. I thought he'd be fine since I left some food. Glad you got back early, Mom. I couldn't understand how my own son could laugh while saying such a thing. Left alone in that state, what if I had returned later than planned? 3-year-old Robert can barely do anything on his own. What did he think would happen if such a young child was left alone for so long? He was definitely too young to be left alone. But instead of saying that, I asked the question I most wanted to know calmly. I have a lot to say, but never mind. More importantly, where are you right now? David said something unbelievable. What? Now? Emma, Betty, and I are on vacation. You aren't here, and we're just relaxing as a family. To my surprise, David had gone on a trip to a tourist destination far from home. And it was a 3-night, 4-day trip. They were enjoying their vacation while leaving Robert behind. I could hear Emma. Hey, let's go. I'm hungry. On the other end of the phone. At that moment, I was convinced. David and Emma no longer saw themselves as Robert's parents. They were irresponsible, and they felt no guilt for what they were doing, and that wasn't changing at this moment. Hearing David and Emma's insensitive words, my anger reached its peak. How could they leave behind a member of their family, especially a young 3-year-old like Robert, and say such things? They couldn't even imagine how lonely and scared Robert was, left alone in the house. I didn't want to be at the mercy of my son and his wife anymore. I decided to end this living arrangement to protect Robert. I hung up the phone silently. Before David and Emma came back, I would take care of everything. First, the house. This house, full of precious memories with my husband, was now being used by David and Emma as they pleased. My late husband wouldn't have wanted this situation either. So, I decided to sell the house and not let them have their way any longer. I immediately contacted a real estate agent to sell the house. The agent was surprised when I told them, but sensing my desperation, they simply said they understood and proceeded with the contract. However, selling a house isn't a quick process. Finding a buyer would take time. But I didn't want David and Emma living in this house any longer. So, I had the locks changed. Now David and Emma couldn't enter the house. I contacted my family and explained the situation, sending all my belongings to my family's home. With that, I had no more ties to this house. I decided to live with Robert at my family's home. When I said, "Robert, we're going to my family's home, and we'll live there from now on, okay?" he replied, "Understand." He took my hand and followed me without fuss. Even at such a young age, he must have felt something. He must have had feelings about being abandoned by his parents. But he didn't say anything about it and stayed by my side, trusting me. I reaffirmed my determination to protect Robert from now on. That was the moment I renewed my determination. A few days passed quickly, and the day my son and his wife were supposed to come back arrived. I waited with my smartphone in hand. The phone should be ringing soon. Sure enough, the phone rang as expected. I checked the caller ID and saw it was David. I intentionally didn't answer and watched the phone vibrate for a while. David kept calling without hanging up. He would keep calling until I answered. I took a deep breath to calm myself and finally pressed the call button. As soon as I answered, David spoke in an angry tone. "The house keys won't work. What's going on?" I almost laughed at his predictable reaction, but steadied myself and calmly told him that I had changed the locks. David, hearing this, said, "I don't understand. This is our house," with a forceful tone. But that house was my husband's, not David and Emma's. However, it's probably too late to say anything meaningful to my son now. So I continue to deliver the message I need to convey in a calm and collected manner. "The house is already up for sale, so neither of you can enter anymore. Also, leaving 3-year-old Robert alone at home is a crime. I'm reporting this to the police, so be prepared." Upon hearing the word police, David started to panic. "There's no need to do that. I haven't done anything wrong," he shouted. It seems Emma, who was probably listening to our conversation from afar, started making a fuss too. But I couldn't care less about what she was saying. In this situation, they were only worried about themselves, which confirmed to me that my decision was the right one. I quietly ended the call while hearing David's pleas and Emma's insults directed at me. The phone kept ringing persistently afterward, so I set up call blocking and put down my smartphone. It's all over now. They will face the consequences of their actions. As planned, I went to the police to report David and Emma. A little while later, David and Emma were arrested for child neglect. They denied the charges, but after being questioned by the police and the prosecutor, they were convicted in court. The last time I saw them in court, they looked terribly worn out and lacked their previous vigor. Life in prison would be tough, but I hope they reflect on their actions there. This incident was also covered in the news, and their faces were exposed to the public, causing a bit of a media stir. A year has passed since then, and they were released after 3 months, but the incident led to their divorce. There was a dispute over who would take custody of Betty, but in the end Emma, the mother, got custody. David lost his job due to the incident and struggled to find new employment with a criminal record. He managed to live as a part-timer, but he had to take on a significant amount of debt to pay the monthly compensation. By the way, this compensation wasn't paid to Emma. It was to his ex-wife from a previous divorce. It later turned out that the cause of that divorce was David's infidelity. And the other woman was none other than Emma. He had started an affair with Emma shortly after Robert was born, while still married to his ex-wife. It turns out that David had been quite the party-goer and was frequently attending social gatherings behind his ex-wife's back. He continued his affair with her, but when she became pregnant, his ex-wife found out, leading to their divorce. Naturally, he was ordered to pay compensation, and his income alone couldn't cover it. That's when he came up with the idea to move in with me. This way, he wouldn't have to pay rent, and if needed, he could ask me for money. Emma also agreed quickly because she wouldn't have to do housework. So, their decision to move in with me wasn't out of concern for me, it was all for their benefit. They hadn't contacted me in a long time, and their sudden change in attitude had such ulterior motives. Upon discovering this truth, I felt less shocked about being deceived by my son and more angered by my own gullibility for being used for such a reason. I had always known David was irresponsible and careless, but I was so lonely after losing my husband that I accepted his proposal without question. Reflecting on my choices at that time, I sighed in exasperation at my own son, who turned out to be such an incorrigible person. He has caused his own troubles and now they are all coming back to him. It is his responsibility. He should atone for trampling on not just debts, but also many people's feelings and thoughts for the rest of his life. On the other hand, after taking in Betty, Emma lived with her parents but became depressed because she couldn't stand the cold stares from people due to the incident. I heard that she has been shutting herself in her room and living listlessly. I was worried about Betty, but Emma's parents are taking care of her, so she is fine for now. Her parents must be having a hard time, but I hope Betty grows up to be strong and kind, not like Emma. And Emma, like David, is now facing the consequences of her actions. She will have to live while atoning for her sins. As for Robert and me, we are now living a peaceful and happy life at my parents' house. Of course, Robert still needs a lot of care, and even though my parents are helping, there are many challenges. Robert, who is still small and doesn't understand much now, will eventually grow up and learn about his parents. When that day comes, he will surely feel pain and sadness. He may never forget being left alone at home that day. But even so, I will stay by Robert's side, watching him grow and overcoming many difficulties together. Having been tormented by my son and his wife, Robert and I now want to live enjoyable days that erase the dark past. Robert looks up to me like a mother and is growing up healthy. His honest and pure words and actions often teach me things, making me feel like I am growing as well. I never imagined that at my age I would be raising a child again, but I am truly grateful that it is Robert. I was tricked by David into living with my son and his wife, enduring unnecessary hardships. I regret that, but because of it, I was able to save Robert from those two and now spend time together, so it wasn't in vain. As long as he needs me, I will give him all my love like a mother. I can't replace his real mother, but I am confident that my love won't lose. I hope Robert grows up to be a broad-minded person who cares about others, not someone who only thinks about himself like David and Emma. One day, while I was thinking about such things, I was taking a walk with Robert in the neighborhood when an elderly couple walking their dog approached us. Seeing the dog, Robert smiled and, "It's a dog!" The elderly couple told him to pet the dog, and he happily petted its head and talked to it. Even without my worries, Robert will surely grow up to be a kind and respectable person. It was a scene that made me think so. Through that incident, the bond between him and me as a family has deepened. No matter what happens from now on, we will surely be okay. As I was thinking about this, Robert called me. For my still clingy and precious son, I will do my best today as well. I woke up feeling incredibly refreshed today. It's because I'm finally going to see my daughter Nancy and granddaughter Emily after so long. I've got the housewarming gift and treats for Emily all ready to go. In high spirits, my husband Robert and I left the house, arriving at Nancy's new place about half an hour later. It was a beautiful, impressive home with white as the main color scheme. My heart swelled with anticipation at seeing everyone, but Nancy and the others only greeted Robert, not saying a word to me or even making eye contact. Robert handed the housewarming gift to Nancy, gave the treats I prepared to Emily, and walked over to the dining table chatting with them. Then, the three adults besides me sat around the table and started talking cheerfully amongst themselves. I spent some time absent-mindedly watching the three of them. They could clearly see me, so why weren't they trying to talk to me? In that awkward atmosphere, I suddenly sensed a presence in the hallway. Glancing over, I saw Emily beckoning to me from the shadows. Oh, I wasn't forgotten after all, I thought, feeling relieved and happy as I hurried over to her. Emily, you've gotten so big. What is it? Grandma. Emily hesitated, seeming to have trouble getting the words out. After a short pause, she opened her mouth to speak. What? You mean? If my hunch was right. Feeling like I'd had a bucket of cold water dumped on me, I left Emily there and impulsively ran outside. About 10 minutes must have passed since I dashed out of Nancy's house. As I calmed down, I noticed my cell phone was vibrating. I'm sorry. I heard something from Emily and ran out without thinking. Actually, I need to talk to Nancy. The time had finally come to have that conversation. I'm Susan. Recently, something wonderful happened. The day after I turned 52, my colleagues at work threw me a little celebration. On my actual birthday, both Robert and I had the day off. I'd been hoping for something special, but the day passed like any other, leaving me a bit disappointed as I drifted off to sleep. Still feeling a little down, I went to work the next day and was greeted by my coworkers' celebration, filling me with joy for the first time in a while. Look, my coworkers celebrated for me. Wow. That's great. I blurted out to Robert when I got home, still giddy with excitement, but his response lacked any emotion. I couldn't help but wonder if the specialness of birthdays just fades away after decades together. He used to be a bit more caring. Robert and I met through a mutual acquaintance 30 years ago. I was drawn to his understated kindness and friendly demeanor, and we started dating. As time passed, we got married and had a daughter, reaching the pinnacle of happiness. Up until the beginning of our marriage, he remained as kind as when we were dating. But one day, despite our daughter being born, he started coming home late or going out more often, saying it was for work-related socializing. What on earth was he doing and where was he during these work outings? Unable to put up with his frequent absences any longer, I asked Robert about it. You've been going out a lot lately. Where do you always go? Robert quietly opened his mouth to reply. The slot machines. I felt like sighing. It seemed he'd gotten hooked on gambling after starting to go with his coworkers. I know it might be hard to stop going suddenly, so I wish you'd try to cut back little by little. Hoping I could still prevent him from getting too absorbed in gambling, I made the request with my last shred of optimism. Yeah, I'll try my best. I decided to wait and trust that Robert would have a change of heart. A few days after that conversation, Nancy started attending preschool. One day, when I went to take the collection envelope to preschool, I found it was nearly empty. Did I forget to put the money in? I wondered, searching for it, but to no avail. If you don't leave for preschool soon, you'll be late. Seeing that I still wasn't leaving even as departure time drew near, Robert called out to me. Actually, I want to take Nancy to preschool, but the collection envelope I prepared is empty. Where could the money have gone? At that, Robert started to look flustered. Sorry, I was short on cash, so I used some of it yesterday. His sudden confession took me completely by surprise. Why? What did you take money from the collection envelope for? Questions raced through my mind. I was hit with an indescribable feeling, a mix of shock and confusion. For the time being, I put on a calm facade, got Nancy off to preschool, and decided to have a talk with Robert that evening. You didn't have enough money because you spent it on slot machines? How much did you use? Ugh. I'm sorry. With an apologetic look, tears welling up in his eyes, he squeezed out the words. He'd been asked to cut back on his visits to the slot machines, but couldn't stop going. Worse still, the amount of money he was pouring in increased, to the point that he dipped into our living expenses. Robert continued explaining. As he went into more detail, an even more shocking truth came to light. Incredibly, Robert had taken out loans under my name. It was so unbelievable, I had to question if this was really happening. I'll make sure to cut back on the slot machines. I won't cause you any more trouble, Susan, and I'll pay back the loans properly. Robert pleaded, tears glistening in his eyes. Could I trust this man's words? Is it even possible to quickly break free from a gambling addiction? With those thoughts swirling in my head, I decided to end the discussion since talking further wouldn't resolve anything right away. Usually, the three of us sleep together as a family, but I wanted to calm down, so we slept separately. Late at night, as I lay in the bed where Nancy was sleeping, some words flashed through my mind. We might have to divorce. I muttered softly, closing my eyelids. Casually glancing to the side, I saw Nancy's face, looking content in her slumber. If we got divorced, would that mean tearing her dad away from her? To Nancy, he's a kind dad who plays with her a lot. And Nancy is very attached to Robert, too. All right, I'll try believing in him. Thinking that hastily divorcing would be hard on Nancy, I decided to have faith that Robert would change his ways. But it wasn't that simple. Robert dipped into our living expenses time and time again. Each time, we'd discuss it, but then he'd repeat the offense. My frustration with Robert's lack of improvement grew, and some days, I didn't even want to talk to him or see his face. But I didn't want Nancy to see her parents not getting along. Single-mindedly determined not to let Nancy feel any sorrow, I refrained from divorcing Robert no matter how many times he betrayed me. Nancy, blissfully unaware of her parents' issues, grew up cheerfully, and before I knew it, she was 15. Dad, Mom, guess what? I got an A on my last practice test. Taking after who knows which parent, she'd grown into a child with a real knack for studying. Wow, you worked hard. That's amazing. What a relief. My little Nancy, her voice brimming with excitement at dinner time as she talked about her high school entrance exams. Just 2 more months until the actual exams. Around midnight, I happened to pass by Nancy's room and noticed the light was still on. Seems she's studying late into the night. Maybe I should bring her a snack as a break. Nancy, sorry to interrupt your studying. I'm coming in for a sec. Mom, what's up? I brought you some donuts since you're working so hard. Wow. Perfect timing. I was just thinking I wanted to take a break. Nancy happily munched on the donut. She was studying so diligently every day, I started to worry she might be overdoing it. I was really impressed by how she steadily put in the effort day by day to get into her target high school. Oh, that reminds me. Dad gave me this the other day. What Nancy cheerfully showed me was a lucky charm for passing her exams. Dad can be really sweet about these things, huh? Robert always supported the decisions Nancy made, cheering her on and giving her thoughtful little gifts. But in reality, even as Nancy grew up, Robert continued to take out loans and come crying to me each time, his attitude never changing. Nancy had no idea Robert was a gambling addict, firmly believing he was a good dad. Then, the high school entrance exams ended, and Nancy managed to get into the school she wanted. Nancy, that's wonderful. It's all thanks to your and Dad's support. Maybe Dad's lucky charm did the trick. Thank you both. Even if the image Robert showed to Nancy was a false one, as long as she was happy, that was enough. Seeing Nancy's blissful face, I felt I'd made the right choice in not divorcing him after all. And so, Nancy enjoyed her high school days before leaving our hometown to attend a university in Boston. Are you really going to Boston? I'd always thought she'd stay close by, so it was incredibly hard to be separated from her. But I didn't want to limit Nancy's options in life because of my own selfish feelings. I wanted Nancy to freely walk down the path she'd chosen for herself. With those mixed feelings swirling inside me, I accepted her decision to go to Boston. Mom, don't worry, I'll come back to visit sometimes. Perhaps sensing my loneliness, Nancy reassured me with those words. And then, the day of Nancy's departure finally arrived. Robert and I saw Nancy off at the airport together. Dad, Mom, you two keep living happily together, okay? With those bright parting words, she headed towards the gate, occasionally glancing back to wave at us. After Nancy left, I silently made my way home, immersed in my loneliness. A life with just the two of us, huh? Robert would probably dive right back into gambling without learning his lesson. I let out a small sigh at the thought. My prediction was spot on. When Nancy was still living with us, he'd go for short stints to avoid arousing her suspicion, but now I was the only one at home. As if to relax, Robert spent all his time at the slot machines, whether it was after work or on his days off. I thought things would be okay as long as we could secure the bare minimum living expenses, so I didn't say anything to Robert and simply went about my days. Deep down, there's no point in saying anything. It won't change. I'm tired of trying to make him quit. I may have given up. As we continued living like that, Nancy graduated from university and ended up getting a job over there. I guess she won't be coming back here anymore. I'd held out a little hope that she might return to our hometown after graduating, but my wish wasn't so easily granted. A few years later, some happy news arrived from Nancy. Mom, I got proposed to. What? Really? Congratulations. What's he like? His name is Thomas, and he's super kind, just like Dad. And you know what? Nancy chattered on about trivial things like what furniture to get for their new home and which houseplants to choose. The words "kind like Dad" stuck with me, but hearing Nancy's cheerful voice overflowing with energy, I swallowed back the story that had almost spilled from my lips. I really should have told Nancy about Robert. But if she found out that the dad she'd always thought was kind was actually a gambling addict drowning in debt, it would surely break her heart. It was enough for me to bear the sorrow and pain alone. Telling myself that, I let the chance to confess slip away. A year later, even more joyous news came flying in. Nancy had given birth to a child. Watching the video, I saw an adorable baby, so tiny it seemed like it might break at the slightest touch, yet crying out with a powerful voice. Our very first grandchild. I wanted to go see the baby right away, but it wasn't a distance I could easily visit. The child was named Emily, and since I couldn't go meet her, Nancy would send me photos and occasionally video call me instead. Each time I heard from Nancy, I could sense Emily growing up healthily and steadily into a cute little girl. When Robert was home during video calls with Emily, I'd call him over to join the conversation, and when photos of Emily arrived, we'd look at them together. My frustration with Robert hadn't been resolved, and after it became just the two of us living together, we could only manage the bare minimum of conversation, but when talking about Emily, we were able to chat naturally like a normal couple. Emily's existence was my salvation. However, little by little, the frequency of Nancy's contact decreased. She must have returned to work and was struggling to balance that with childcare. I reminisced about the past, thinking, I had a period like that too. Back then, no matter what I was doing, I was so busy and it was tough. When she is going through turbulent times with work and parenting, getting contacted more than necessary must be unsettling. I held back on reaching out to Nancy myself, hoping she'd contact me once her life settled down and she had more breathing room. Then, around the time Emily turned 5, Robert, who had unusually come home in time for dinner, said this. Nancy's family is moving to the next town over, apparently. Seems like Thomas got transferred or something. Really? They contacted you? Yeah, I was busy so I only heard the brief version though. Something that important, they could have contacted me directly. Feeling a little miffed in my heart that they hadn't reached out to me, I was still overjoyed that Nancy would be moving nearby. I'll try giving Nancy a quick call next time I have a day off. I can't wait for my next break. With those thoughts swirling in my head, I was somehow able to sleep soundly that night. Then, when my day off came, I opened up my cell phone to contact Nancy. About to make the call, a casual thought popped into my mind. I don't know what she's up to right now, so I'll just try messaging her for the time being. Nancy, how are you doing? Are Thomas and Emily doing well too? I heard from Dad that you're moving to the next town over, is that true? Fill me in on the details next time you have a chance. After sending the message, I was restless wondering when I'd get a reply, but even after noon passed, there was still no response. That night, I finally got a response from Nancy. Sorry, I've been busy. Our house in the next town will be finished at the end of May. We plan to move in June. I see. Let me know once you've settled on a moving date. Nancy's curt message conveyed just how busy she was. I wanted to keep in touch more, but I ended our message exchange so as not to bother her. A few months later, the day arrived for Nancy and her family to move. I was looking forward to seeing Nancy and Emily for the first time in a while. I woke up feeling unusually refreshed and found myself humming while getting ready. I've got the housewarming gift and the treats for Emily too. All set. Are you ready to go? Yeah, I'm good. Let's head out. Robert and I set off together for Nancy's housewarming party. After a few dozen minutes, we arrived at Nancy's new home. It was a gorgeous, impressive house with white as the predominant color. My heart swelled with anticipation, wondering how much Emily had grown as I entered the house. Hey there, Thomas. What a marvelous home you've built. Robert, long time no see. Please, come on in. Dad, welcome. Come in, come in. Yay! You're finally here. The moment they spotted Robert, the three of them rushed over to usher him inside. As Robert forged ahead, I quietly followed behind. Still, it seemed like all three of them only greeted Robert, without saying a word to me or even making eye contact. Deciding I must be imagining things, I took a seat on the living room sofa. Here's the housewarming gift. And some sweets for Emily. Wow, thanks for going out of your way, Dad. Did you pick these out? No, Susan chose them. I see. Oh, Dad. You like this wine, right? Thomas likes it too, he says. With that, they headed over to the dining table, where the three adults excluding me sat around chatting cheerfully. I spent some time absent-mindedly watching the three of them. It wasn't my imagination that they weren't speaking to me or meeting my gaze. It's not like they couldn't see me, so why weren't Nancy and Thomas trying to talk to me? Could it be that I'd done something to cause this? Even Emily, who I'd video called with so much, wouldn't come near me. Maybe she'd forgotten my face since it had been a while since our last video call. I sat on the sofa, questions swirling in my mind about Nancy and Thomas's behavior. In that uncomfortable atmosphere, I absent-mindedly sensed a presence in the hallway. Glancing over, I saw Emily beckoning to me from the shadows. Emily was going to talk to me. Feeling relieved and happy that she hadn't forgotten me, I hurried over to her with quick steps. Emily, you've gotten so big. What's up? Do you have something to tell Grandma? Grandma. Emily hesitated, seeming to have trouble getting the words out. The next moment, the words that spilled from Emily's mouth were beyond anything I could have imagined. I want you to stop taking money from Mommy and Daddy. Shocked, I asked her to repeat herself. What? I'm taking money from your parents? I was completely baffled by this sudden accusation that I had no recollection of. When had I ever taken money from Nancy and her family? And why would Emily, at just 5 years old, be telling me this? I'm sorry, Grandma doesn't really understand this talk about money. Did your parents say something? I gently asked, trying to get some information on why Emily had brought this up. I overheard Mommy and Daddy talking. They said because Grandma takes money, Mommy and Daddy are in a lot of trouble. They said they can't give you money anymore. Don't cause trouble for Mommy and Daddy. Emily pleaded with me, her eyes welling up with sadness. Seeing Emily's sorrowful face, I instinctively patted her head. As I stroked Emily's hair, I came to my senses. Could it be? I had an unsettling premonition. For the past year or two, Robert had stopped mentioning money to me. I hadn't paid it much mind, assuming his gambling luck had simply been good lately. If my hunch was right. Feeling like I'd had a bucket of cold water dumped on me, I left Emily there and impulsively ran outside. After running for a bit until I was out of breath, I sent Robert a message. Then I hurriedly headed to a nearby spot. About 10 minutes must have passed since I dashed out of Nancy's house. As I calmed down, I noticed my cell phone was vibrating. However, before I could pick it up, the vibration stopped. Looking at the screen, I saw several missed calls from Nancy. For the time being, I called Nancy back to apologize for leaving her house without a word. "I'm sorry for suddenly disappearing without saying goodbye."
"That's okay, but after I noticed you were gone, Dad abruptly left too. What's going on with you two?"
Nancy sounded perplexed. "I'm sorry. I heard something from Emily and ran out without thinking. Actually, I need to talk to you, Nancy." The time had finally come to have that conversation. I had no recollection of what Emily had said. It was almost certainly Robert's doing. Robert must have been borrowing money from Nancy and her family without telling me. At this rate, Robert would surely keep demanding money from them over and over. Desperately wanting to somehow prevent Nancy from going through the same painful experiences as me, I finally resolved to come clean. "I know you love your dad very much, Nancy. But your mom, well, I've been constantly troubled by your dad. Yeah, even before you were born, your dad got hooked on gambling. He couldn't break free from his addiction, and at its worst, he'd dip into our living expenses."
"What? Really?"
Nancy seemed shocked by this side of Robert she hadn't known. "But that's not all. He's taken out a lot of loans under my name. I'm still steadily paying them back, but your dad hasn't changed, so the repayments are far from over."
"Wait a minute, something doesn't add up. Isn't it that you're the one in debt and struggling?"
Did Nancy think I was the one with the loans?
"Dad came to me about 2 years ago, asking to borrow money. Even when I asked what he needed it for, he wouldn't give a clear answer and just said you were in trouble. It wasn't a huge amount, so I lent it to him as is. But this past year, he's been contacting me a lot, and even when I told him to let me talk to you, Dad wouldn't put you on."
According to Nancy, Robert had been contacting her and Thomas, saying I had borrowed money and didn't have the means to pay it back, so he needed a loan. And it wasn't just once or twice. Moreover, Robert had apparently said this to prevent them from contacting me directly. "Your mom is a bit messed up right now because of the debt, so don't reach out to her. We don't want her mental state to get any worse, so it's best not to agitate her too much." Hearing that from Nancy, I'd finally reached my limit. What was he thinking, going so far as to borrow money from our daughter and her family?
"I'm so sorry for all the trouble your dad has caused. And I'm sorry, too, for keeping quiet about your dad to you, Nancy."
I regretted not telling Nancy about Robert's behavior until now. Because of my silence, I couldn't even fathom how much hardship I'd put Nancy and Thomas through. Thinking back on all the missed chances, wishing I'd spoken up back then, I was overwhelmed with remorse. "You were so fond of your dad and really close to him. I thought I couldn't take your dad away from you, so I've kept it hidden all this time. I wanted to be good parents in front of you, to be a happy family." Nancy listened in silence for a while as I spoke through my tears. Then, after a short pause, she said in a trembling voice,
"If you were struggling so much, I wish you'd told me at the time. Did you not rely on me even when I was older, when I became an adult? No matter what, my love for you and Dad will never change, and because we're family, we can talk about anything, can't we?"
Nancy's words brought an endless stream of tears. "So, do you know why Dad rushed out in such a hurry earlier?" That's right. I had completely forgotten about Robert.
"After I heard the story from Emily, my anger towards your dad exploded and I went to City Hall. I got the divorce application forms. I can't take it anymore, so I'm divorcing him. That's what I messaged him. Then, he must have seen the message on his phone and panicked. Dad was in such a rush, he left the front door wide open when he took off. Thanks to that, he didn't even get to drink his favorite booze. Well, it's his own fault though,
Nancy said with a laugh. Nancy.
I'm divorcing your dad.
Yeah, thank you for hanging in there all this time. And I'm sorry too, for believing what Dad said and treating you so coldly. Can you forgive me? Of course.
It was quite a shock to be ignored like that. I'm glad we're talking again.
And so, Nancy and I reconciled and were able to talk like we used to. It seems Nancy told Thomas about all this too. Later on, I got an apologetic call from Thomas as well.
Susan, I'm so sorry for my rude behavior the other day. Nancy told me everything.
No, don't worry about it. If anything, I should be apologizing for all the trouble Robert has caused you. I'll make sure he pays you back properly.
By the way, I have a friend who's well-versed in divorce cases. Would it be all right if I introduced you?
I was able to make amends with Thomas too, and he even offered to help with the divorce preparations. Since it would be difficult for me to live under the same roof as Robert until the divorce was finalized, I decided to rent an apartment and live alone to avoid seeing him. The preparations for the divorce proceeded smoothly on my end, until all that was left was to file for the divorce trial. The person Thomas introduced me to was extremely competent, advising me to properly claim compensation in the divorce settlement, including reparations for everything up until now. Without hesitation, I went through the procedures to request compensation in the divorce trial. Getting money won't change the past, but it's better than nothing and might make me feel a bit lighter.
Hello, Robert? I'm all set for the divorce, but what about you? I'm really sorry for everything, Susan. Won't you please reconsider? I won't go to the slot machines anymore, and I'll pay back the money I owe Nancy and them properly, so won't you come back home for now? I won't do it again. I won't go anymore. I've heard those same lines so many times. Do you have any idea how much it hurts me to have believed your words and been betrayed over and over?
Remembering all the times I'd been betrayed in the past, my chest tightened with pain. Even after the divorce trial began, Robert kept complaining without remorse, but after multiple court sessions, the divorce was finally granted. The money Robert had borrowed under my name was also legally arranged to be repaid by him, allowing me to break free from the burden of debt at last. As for the money he'd borrowed from Nancy and her family, legal procedures were put in place to ensure Robert would pay it back properly too. After the divorce was finalized, Robert continued living alone in the house we'd originally shared. However, gambling addiction is truly a frightening thing. Even after all this, Robert couldn't quit gambling. Unable to borrow money or turn to anyone for help, a desperate Robert apparently ended up dipping into company funds. Now, he's living quietly in a town far from our hometown. They say he's working diligently to pay off the compensation from the divorce trial and his debts. Sometime later, I went to visit Nancy's house one day. As we were having lunch together, chatting about trivial things, the topic suddenly changed.
Hey, Mom. Thomas and I were thinking, why don't you come live with us in this house?
I was surprised by the unexpected offer, and at the same time, joy welled up inside me. But I had already caused Nancy and her family so much trouble. And yet, I couldn't possibly impose on them any further. I'm very happy, but I'll just accept your feelings. The moment I replied, Emily's energetic voice rang out.
We get to live with Grandma? Yay! Grandma, you'll be with me forever. I'm so happy.
Seeing Emily's delighted expression and how overjoyed she was, I started to feel guilty about refusing. Is it really okay for me to depend on you all like this?
Of course. Emily's thrilled, and Thomas and I are happy too. Plus, it'd be reassuring to have you live with us.
And so, It was decided that I would live together with Nancy and her family. Since Nancy and Thomas both wanted to focus on their careers, I spent my days doing housework and looking after Emily to support them. Thanks to that, every day felt truly fulfilling. Even while enjoying such happy days, I sometimes find myself thinking, if I had trusted Nancy, who was still a student at the time, and told her about Robert during my most painful period, I wonder what the outcome would have been. If I had confessed everything when Nancy got married, would a different future have awaited us? Still, by finding the courage at the very end, I'm able to spend incomparably happier days than ever before.
Grandma, I'm home. Listen, listen. Today, my teacher.
As I watched Emily cheerfully sharing about her day with a radiant smile, I wished for this happiness to continue forever.
Impossible. William, that can't be done.
Switch the medicine with that. I only heard a whisper, but it was unmistakably William's voice. I'm sorry, Linda. Actually. The next day, Mary confessed something to me. I was shocked and at the same time, resolved. I must protect Mary at all costs. And William, I will never forgive you. My name is Linda. A 55-year-old housewife. Recently, my only son John got married, and I felt at ease. My husband William and I are the same age.
Guess we need to start thinking about our retirement, huh?
We would laugh about it. John used to live alone in an apartment about a 5-minute drive from our house. It was a studio apartment. So, after getting married, the newlyweds moved to a bigger apartment. Their new place was even closer to us, just a 10-minute walk away. William and I thought, it's comforting to have John so close. But I felt a bit uneasy. Being so close to the house means we need to be careful not to overstep boundaries. I was warned by a friend before. At this age, most of my friends have become mother-in-laws just like me. And from them, I got various pieces of advice. The most shocking was about sons' wives.
People have two sides. Just because she smiles in front of you doesn't mean she's happy.
My friend said in a serious voice. In essence, don't be fooled by the superficial smiles of sons' wives. No one wants to doubt the smiling face of their son's wife. But my friend's words were convincing. In fact, this friend got along well with her daughter-in-law, meeting up frequently. She was like a real daughter to me. She'd often say. However, it turned out the daughter-in-law had been forcing herself to accommodate herself to her mother-in-law. One day, her pent-up frustrations exploded, and she got angry. They almost broke off their relationship, but somehow they managed to calm things down.
At the end of the day, we're strangers. A proper distance is crucial.
I remember the tired sigh and the lonely look on my friend's face. Mary, who married John, is a really nice girl. Always smiling and great at listening to others. Truly adorable. I wondered how such a nice girl ended up marrying John. When I visited the apartment, Mary greeted me with a smile. Furthermore,
feel free to visit anytime,
she said. I want to believe there's no lie in her words or smile. But taking everything she says at face value and imposing could be dangerous. To get along with a son's wife, such caution is necessary. By being cautious, we maintained a good relationship. We meet only when invited by the couple. We also refrain from contacting them unless necessary. It feels a bit lonely, but thanks to this, we've been able to get along without any issues. However, one day, when my son and his wife came to visit, they made a surprising request.
Excuse me? What did you say?
I asked again, and John repeated the same words. That's right, I've been assigned to work overseas, so we want Mary to stay here with you. John had been on business trips abroad before. But this was his first long-term assignment. Upon asking, it turns out the duration is at least 2 years. And it might extend beyond that.
2 years? Is it okay for a couple to be apart for so long? Wouldn't it be better for Mary to go with you?
Mary has her job, and I'll be busy abroad. It's safer for her to live with you guys than alone in a foreign country. John looked to Mary for consent, and Mary nodded with a smile.
Really? We don't mind, but
if we can support our son and his wife, that would be wonderful. But, is this really what Mary wants? Living with us, the in-laws, might be less comfortable for her than following John abroad. If Mary's parents were around, maybe she could have relied on them, but both of Mary's parents have passed away.
But why can't she just live on her own? The apartment is close, and of course, we'd be happy to help if anything happens. There's no need to live together unnecessarily.
Thinking it would be better for Mary, I suggested this to the couple. But, for some reason,
that won't work,
Mary immediately said.
Mary has some bad memories from the past, and she can't live alone.
Mary nodded.
Is that so? I'm sorry for not knowing.
No, it's fine. Then, living together might be the only option. At that moment, William, who had been silently observing, said, "If that's the case, she should stay with us. There's no need to hesitate. Mary is our daughter now." William smiled at the couple. "Besides," he added, "I often come home late from work. It'd be better for Linda to have Mary around than to be alone." True, William doesn't start work early, but he often comes home late. It's reassuring not to be alone at such times. Yes, if Mary is okay with it, let's live together happily. Indeed, there are benefits to living together. Not only drawbacks. And unlike me, a housewife, Mary has a job. We won't always be together. Maybe we could make it work.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it.
Us too. And so, Mary began living with us. I was nervous about living together, but Mary was indeed a good person.
Linda, good morning. Would you like to join me for breakfast?
When I woke up, there were delicious-looking scrambled eggs, sausages, and soup on the table. Oh, thank you. I'm so happy to have someone cook for me, it's never happened before. But, it must have been a lot of work. No, I was making some for myself anyway. I hope it's good.
Let's eat. Yes, it's delicious.
I'm glad. Mary has a job, so I did most of the housework. But Mary never dumped everything on me. Instead, she actively helped with the chores. John really has an eye for people. Marrying someone as wonderful as Mary, he's a lucky guy. I looked to William for confirmation. Indeed. And he smiled. Living together seemed problem-free. However, about a month into our living together, I noticed a change in Mary. She still did housework between her job duties but started to stay in her room unusually often. After meals, she'd head straight to her room and not come out until morning. Even in the morning, she used to have breakfast with us, but now she'd leave for work before we even woke up.
Did I do something to make her dislike me? It's lonely.
I told this to William, who returned home late. Are you thinking too much? Mary might just want some alone time.
That may be true, but I feel like she's avoiding us.
Living together with us. Mary has to be considerate of us every day. Maybe she's tired of it. As I pondered, William patted my shoulder. Don't be too anxious. It's bad for your health. Don't fall sick again. I had previously been hospitalized for a stroke. Remembering that, William looked worried and stroked my back.
I'm fine. I'm taking my medication properly. But maybe I am overthinking it.
After that, Mary avoided me even more, but I tried not to mind it. Weekdays were okay, but weekends were hard. On weekends, William would go out alone. So, I often went out with Mary. Even if we didn't go out, we chatted at home while eating snacks and spending time together. But recently, Mary would refuse even if I invited her. Moreover, she started going out every weekend. Are you going out now? I casually asked Mary as she was heading to the entrance. Mary looked puzzled and said, "This has nothing to do with you. Please leave me alone." Then Mary hurried out of the house. I understood she was rejecting me. Having been close at first, I was more shocked than I imagined. Since then, I've also started avoiding Mary somehow. Will things stay this way until John returns from abroad? Maybe it would be better for both of us to stop living together now. I wanted to talk to William, but, as luck would have it, he was not around. William had been away on a business trip for 2 weeks. The weekends were painful for me, so I tried to go out as much as possible. I didn't want to run into Mary. When I got home, I could hear Mary's voice coming from her room. It sounded like she was talking to someone. Since Mary wouldn't invite guests over without telling me, she must be on the phone.
I'm home.
I called out and approached her room. As I was about to quietly open the door, I realized Mary was on a call. She was indeed on the phone. Convinced, I thought not to disturb her call and was about to leave. When Mary raised her voice.
It's impossible, William. I can't do that.
I definitely heard William's name. William was supposed to be on a business trip. It seemed unlikely he would contact Mary from there. Yet, I heard Mary continue.
William, that's why I can't.
I heard Mary say. I approached Mary's room again, trying to listen. I could hear Mary's voice, but not the person on the other end. I couldn't tell if it was William nor understand the conversation. Feeling frustrated, I couldn't leave or interrupt. I just stood there. Meanwhile, Mary seemed troubled on the phone. Repeatedly saying,
That's why it's impossible,
she said over and over. Was William asking her for something? Maybe I should help. But she'll find out I was eavesdropping. It might worsen our already strained relationship. Yet, it's sad to think our relationship could get any worse. As I was pondering this, Mary cried out in distress. Almost simultaneously, I heard something fall. Soon after, William's low voice filled the room. Switch the medicine with that. Perhaps Mary dropped her smartphone, causing it to switch to speaker mode. Mary must have quickly picked up the phone and switched it off speaker because William's voice disappeared, and only Mary's voice was audible again. After that, I understand, Mary said, then fell silent. She must have ended the call. I took a deep breath, quietly returned to the entrance. And after composing myself, I'm home. I called out to Mary again. Ah, welcome back. Mary came out of her room, her face tense. There was no way I could question her about the phone call. Mary went back to her room with a troubled look. Who was William talking about? Most of all, the words about switching the medication with that stayed in my mind. I thought about asking Mary several times, but didn't have the courage to do so. Had William and Mary been in contact without my knowledge all this time? William's tone during that moment was far from his usual demeanor. Such a commanding tone, not just towards Mary, but he wouldn't even use it with me. What if Mary was betraying me? Or, what if William was threatening Mary? I couldn't sleep that night. The next day, rubbing my sleepy eyes, I was drinking water in the kitchen when Mary woke up. Good morning, Mary. My voice was hoarse from lack of sleep. But Mary's voice sounded even less energetic. Good morning, she said, looking down, in a barely audible voice. Mary, you seem down. What's wrong? Could it be related to yesterday's phone call? Concerned, I looked at Mary and was shocked. Mary's eyes were swollen. Her cheeks were wet with tears, and tears were still overflowing from her eyes. Mary, what's wrong? Are you okay? Instinctively grabbing her hand, Mary grasped mine back. I'm sorry, Linda. Actually. Mary then explained something to me while crying. It was unbelievably shocking. I didn't know how to react after hearing everything. Stunned by Mary's sudden confession, my mind went blank. Mary cried in front of me again. I'm sorry. Linda, I'm sorry. Mary kept apologizing. I hugged Mary. What are you talking about? It's all William's fault, not yours. I tried to soothe her, but Mary's tears wouldn't stop. Hoping to calm her down, I gently stroked her back. "I'm sorry. It's my fault for keeping silent."
"It's not your fault. Everyone has things they can't share. Besides, if John is okay with it, then neither William nor I should interfere in a couple's matters."
Saying this out loud helped her cool down gradually. And then, anger towards William started to rise. How many years has it been since William and I got married? We've had our fights and even discussed separation. But I had always intended to spend the rest of my life with William. Never did I imagine he would be plotting such things behind my back. After a while, when Mary seemed to have calmed down, we decided to discuss what to do next. First, we should contact John before William returns from his business trip. For Mary, she thought,
"I don't want to interfere with his work."
"But that's not right."
"He would consider you more important than his job." "How would John feel if he found out you've been struggling like this?"
After hearing this, Mary silently agreed. We tried contacting John, but couldn't reach him. Maybe he was busy with work or asleep. We decided to leave a message summarizing the situation and asking him to call us when he has time. 2 days later, William returned from his business trip. I'm exhausted," he repeated, handing me his bag and jacket. I took them, saying, "Welcome back," without really meaning it. Entering the living room, William looked around. "What's wrong?" I asked, and William replied, "Just wondering where Mary is." Scanning the room again. "Oh, I sent her out for some shopping." "Did you need her for something?" I said with a forced smile, and William replied, "No, not really," averting his gaze. While William showered, I prepared the documents on the table. The thought of showing them to William filled me with mixed emotions. After decades of marriage, I never wanted to use such papers. But knowing the truth, I could no longer envision a future with him. William came out of the shower, looking satisfied, and sat down with a towel around his neck. Normally, he would finish off a beer already set out for him. But noticing the absence of beer, he squinted at me questioningly. "Hey, where's the beer?" "There's no beer today. Look at this instead," I urged, and William, looking at the papers on the table, was shocked. "What's this?" he said angrily, staring at the table. I clenched my fist and said, "These are divorce papers. Please, let's get divorced." "Huh?" William shifted his gaze from the divorce papers to me. "Divorce? Why?" I sensed more anger than confusion in William's voice and expression. "Why does someone like me have to be told by you to divorce?" I can almost hear him saying that. "It seems like you wanted a divorce, right?" William looked surprised. "No, I never, that." I couldn't help but laugh. "What's so funny?" "Because you're so flustered." "Oh right, you didn't want a divorce, you wanted to remarry." William remained silent, looking troubled. I know everything. Your affair with another woman, trying to make me take medication to be with her, and what I can't forgive the most is that you threatened Mary." William turned pale and started to sweat. With that face, "It's not true, that's not it." He kept repeating excuses. "Whatever you say is pointless. I heard everything from Mary." "Mary, that bastard." Mary had debts before getting married. It seems William found out when she was talking to John about it on the phone. The reason she couldn't live alone was because she wanted to use the rent money to repay the debt. Knowing she had no money, William must have thought he had the upper hand. He had Mary doing menial tasks behind my back. Mary, afraid of being thrown out, couldn't stand up to William. Apparently, Mary was keeping an eye on William every time she had a day off to break free from him. That's when she witnessed William cheating. When she confronted him, "Linda will be the one who's sad," he brazenly responded. And then, brazenly, since it was out in the open, William ordered Mary to switch my medication.
So, you thought of getting rid of me because I was in your way?
Yes, shockingly, the person William was talking about over the phone was me. Having had a stroke before, there's a medication I must take daily. Without it, I'm prone to blood clots, and unluckily, it could be fatal. William was planning to swap my medication with something else.
Of all things, to swap it with a vitamin pill, huh?
For most people, it's just a supplement, but for me, it's poison. Depending on the type of vitamin, it could increase the risk of blood clots. In other words, William was after my life.
Anyway, I can no longer stay with you. Please, let's get a divorce. We'll discuss the money for the divorce proceedings through a lawyer later.
William looked frustrated and then turned his gaze to Mary, who returned.
Mary, how dare you do this? You know what will happen, right?
Mary showed a momentary look of fear, but when I took her hand, she glared back at William. I know. It's okay now. I have Linda.
What? Getting cocky, aren't you?
William seemed ready to pounce at any moment. But just then, there was a noise from the entrance, and John appeared.
Are you okay?
John stood in front of William, shielding Mary.
John, why are you here? I got a call from Mom and rushed back from overseas.
Dad, I'm disappointed. What have you done?
At first, I just wanted to exploit a weakness and leave. But then, I needed money.
Either way, it's despicable.
I don't want to see your face anymore.
Just leave. Wait.
Are you okay with this, Linda? Saying such things. You're a housewife without an income. You won't be able to live. Don't worry. I'll get the money for the divorce proceedings from you. Besides, this house was inherited from my parents, so don't act so high and mighty.
William was still saying something so arrogant, but...
I'll call the police,
I said, and he left. Afterward, William and I divorced. William had been secretly supporting his mistress, and some savings had been spent. I feel like I understand why he needed money. As a substitute for the money for the divorce proceedings, I took all his remaining savings. William's life from here on is on zero savings. Relationships broken off by his son, it's going to be quite hard. Whether his mistress will stick with him through this kind of life is questionable, but I couldn't care less. John went back to work the day after everything was settled. Mary and I are still living together. I repaid Mary's debts with the money I got from William. My son and his wife wanted to repay it themselves, but considering the interest rate, it seemed wasteful. Since it was William's money anyway, I wanted to use it up quickly. The regular meals between my son's wife and I are now my greatest joy. We want to keep getting along well until John returns home. What are you?
A stalker or something? You disgust me. Go home already.
I came to the wedding to celebrate the happily smiling bride and groom. Then, to my surprise, the groom turned out to be my ex-husband, Alec. I'm definitely not his stalker.
Do you like me that much? If so, you should have come out in the open, and I might have considered you as an affair partner. Trying to crash my wedding is just too disappointing.
All my past anger and the shock of suddenly encountering Alec just vanished. As Alec wished, I decided to leave. However, 30 minutes later, I ended up returning to the venue with someone. I wonder if Alec would be pleased with the surprise guest. It's going to be more interesting than any entertainment. I'm Melissa, 36 years old. I met my husband Stuart 10 years ago. At the nursing home where my grandmother was staying, I blurted out big when I first met Stuart, a caregiver there. He's close to 6.5 feet tall, big both vertically and horizontally. As I covered my mouth with my hand, feeling I had said too much, he smiled shyly.
Big, right? Everyone calls me a bear.
Gradually, I got closer to Stuart. Despite his appearance resembling a wild man-eating bear, his personality was like a cute bear sunbathing at a bear park. Kind, gentle, and comforting to be around. I never dreamed of marriage and had decided to stay single, but my stubborn heart was softened, and I ended up marrying. Now, blessed with our 4-year-old son Leon, I deeply feel it was the right thing to do. The reason I avoided marriage was because I had failed at it once. I got married for the first time at 22. To a man who was the opposite of Stuart, modern, slender, fresh-faced, and handsome. His well-featured face could make anyone believe he was a celebrity. In fact, my ex-husband Alec would often lie to people he just met. I used to model in Boston. Our married life was in my hometown, where it was quite rural. Not a farmland rural, but a place where everyone needs a car. Yet supermarkets and hospitals are only a 10-minute drive away, and if you drive 30 minutes more, you'll find a large shopping mall as well. I think it's a nice countryside. And as for Alec, he came from the city. He attended a nearby university and stayed in the area after graduation. At first, our marriage life was enjoyable. Alec got along with my friends, often suggesting we call someone to hang out. Being young, we would gather with friends, drink, and have fun. Alec was quick to fit in with a female-dominated environment. I thought he wanted to cherish everything about me, including my friendships. He loved me that much. I truly believed so. This is hard to say, but it was a few months into our marriage. A friend approached me seriously. Alec has asked me out multiple times, to hang out just the two of us without telling you. It wasn't an invitation to play tag or pretend. My head was immediately filled with indecent thoughts. And it wasn't just her. Alec had approached almost all of my friends. I felt betrayed by Alec and sorry for my friends. I confronted Alec immediately. I'm just saying that to be sociable. It makes women happy. Alec carelessly patted my head as I turned red with anger. Well, some simple women might misunderstand kindness from a handsome guy like me. Luckily, none of my friends betrayed me to go along with Alec's invitations. Everything was attempted but not fulfilled, and my friends forgave him with awkward smiles. After that, Alec's interactions with my friends ceased. Alec was also close with my parents. Once a month, he would visit my parents' home and drink with my father. With no more plans with my friends, visits to my parents increased.
Got some booze for today.
Alec and my father, both fond of alcohol, got along well, and home visits would turn into daytime drinking sessions. Alec would bring selected drinks as gifts, pleasing my father. My mother, Reagan, would prepare appetizers, and we spent lively times as a family. Alec, comfortable and natural with my in-laws, was well liked by them. But gradually, my parents started to act differently. One time, as I was about to go to the bathroom, my mom stopped me and whispered secretly, "We'd appreciate it if you could reduce the frequency of your visits. You know, we're getting older, and it's becoming difficult for us." She was vague, but it seemed she had more to say. "The alcohol Alec brought today is hard to come by, you know. I heard it costs $500.
What? It's not that expensive?
My mother clammed up. Then, she revealed something I hadn't expected. He's been asking us to pay for it.
What?
It's nice having Alec over and the alcohol is good. But, honestly, it's a burden to pay for expensive alcohol every time. Initially, the cost for the alcohol was around $20.
Could I get the money for the alcohol?
He would say so nonchalantly, and my mother happily paid. But gradually, the price increased, and it became normal for it to exceed $300. However, the actual cost of the alcohol was at most $50, and above all, it was purchased with our living expenses. $500 is just too much. But we can't spoil Alec's feelings, right? Indeed, my parents had repeatedly said that gifts were unnecessary, without me realizing the underlying sentiment. I thought I was doing filial piety by visiting frequently with Alec. I immediately confronted Alec, who looked happily flushed, about asking for money. Maybe because he was drunk, he responded nonchalantly. "What's the big deal? If you go to a club, you pay a lot of money, right?
I'm bringing alcohol and drinking it with them, so I should get paid, or it's a loss.
He didn't care about my anger at all, almost as if he expected gratitude. Turning towards my beet red face, he laughed.
Hey, Melissa turned into an octopus. Reagan, make some octopus appetizers.
I was so dumbfounded by the absurdity of it all that I lost my words. I just exchanged looks with my parents, who had twisted expressions. Alec seemed to like my family home. Unlimited drinks, a mother who worked like a maid, and he even receives pocket money. But I couldn't bring Alec home anymore.
Ah, so boring. I'm nice to you and this is how you treat me.
After that, Alec stopped coming to the house and started going out alone. On top of not giving me any money for living expenses, he had secretly incurred debts. And when infidelity came to light and I confronted him, he suddenly hit me.
Shut up. I don't need you anymore. It's over, we're getting divorced.
And that's how we ended up divorcing. A bitter memory I don't want to even remember. I had forgotten about him, blessed with a new family, but 13 years after the divorce, for some reason, Alec was here. And next to a bride in a pure white dress. Alec was the groom. It was a wedding I was invited to by my junior at work, Chanel. The guest list exceeded 300 people, a grand ceremony. Alec in his late 30s had changed his vibe, but there was no way I would mistake him for someone else. The radiant beauty of his youth was gone, replaced by the air of a sweet, calm gentleman. He was spreading his best smile all over the reception. I had dressed up nicely but tried to make myself less noticeable by slouching a bit. My mind was full of why and how. Maybe my suspicious behavior made me stand out more, as I locked eyes with him. I smiled awkwardly and nodded slightly while sweating. Oh my God, how awkward. I felt so uncomfortable that I went to the bathroom. The reception had just started. I spent some time there, but I couldn't stay hidden for another 2 hours. Reluctantly, as I was about to return, Alec, with his arms crossed, was blocking the way in front of the venue. What are you doing here? I wanted to ask the same. When we divorced, Alec had scornfully said he hated country folk and moved to the city. I didn't know he had come back to my hometown. Alec leaned in with the same unpleasant smile as before.
What's the matter? You still hung up on me after all these years?
He seemed gentlemanly earlier, but it must have been just the outfit and the setting. Alec was still laughing vulgarly.
Wow, you've got wrinkles. You've aged. You were cute when you were younger, but marrying for looks was a mistake. Good thing I divorced you back then.
Alec pointed at the faint laugh lines I was self-conscious about and laughed all by himself. I've always felt he was a bit immature, but now it's just creepy, like he's still a little kid.
Oh, wait a minute. What was your name again?
Oh, Averill?
Betty? Let's see. Oh yeah, Melissa. Look, just give up on me already. As you can see, I'm married.
I've already. I started to say, but Alec wasn't listening to me.
Can't believe you were able to stalk me with that face of yours. Don't you own a mirror? Or are your eyes rotten? Oh, maybe it's presbyopia? Let's make things clear. With your looks, there's no way you and I could start over. Ah, I didn't want to see you. In my memories, you were still cute. Don't tarnish my memories.
Alec stuck out his tongue in jest. Our past is already tainted. I only remember fighting with Alec, and if it's possible, I'd remove those memories from my brain. I wasn't prepared to encounter Alec like this today. I wanted to say something back, but my mind went blank and no words came out. I clenched my fist tightly and looked away from him.
Ah, your face is all red. Oh right, Melissa, you always used to get so mad and turn red. It was cute when you were younger, but a red-faced angry old woman is just ugly.
My face felt even hotter. I looked away, but Alec kept peering into my face.
You shouldn't choose a marriage partner based on looks. After all, looks fade. Sorry, Melissa, for leaving you when looks were all you had. This time, I'm going to be happy. I chose my partner not just for her looks, but for what's inside.
What's inside? I couldn't help but ask back. Yeah, the inside.
You must have been able to sneak in because there are so many people, but don't you see that you don't belong here at a wedding?
Get lost already. He gestured as if he was shooing a dog away.
But
Again, Alec didn't listen to my words. Stop it.
If you keep disrupting the wedding, I'll call the police. What you're doing is called stalking.
But, do you like me that much?
If so, you should have come out in the open, and I might have considered you as an affair partner. Trying to crash my wedding is just too disappointing.
Alec was loquacious, not giving me a chance to interject. He's always been talkative, but now he seemed overly excited. Breathing roughly, he finished speaking to me. What are you?
A stalker or something? You disgust me.
Go home already. I came here to celebrate the happily grinning bride and groom. I'm certainly not Alec's stalker. But I didn't feel like clearing up Alec's misunderstanding.
Fine, I'll leave.
Past anger and the confusion of suddenly encountering Alec just disappeared, and I answered emotionlessly. I had my bag with me, so I decided to leave without returning to the reception. I turned my back and Alec waved at me.
Bye-bye.
I turned around and asked one last question.
You chose her for what's inside?
Alec smirked nastily and nodded deeply. Yeah. She's really the best.
There's no way you could compete.
Is that so? Hearing just that, I walked away from Alec. The wedding venue was on a small hill. Surrounded by the clear sky and the sea, it was a beautiful location with no buildings around. However, it's hard to return to town without a car. I had planned to call Stuart for a pickup in a few hours, so I explained the situation to him. While waiting for Stuart, I sat on a bench outside the venue, quietly looking at the sky. Stuart was with Leon in a nearby park, so it would take some time for him to arrive. I had woken up early today, got ready, and even had my hair done at the salon. Alec laughed at me for looking older, but my son, Leon, told me I looked cute. I was so upset over the treatment Alec had given me, after putting so much effort into looking nice. 30 minutes had passed since I left the venue. I thought it was Stuart calling when my mobile phone rang, but the screen strangely showed Alec. My finger froze as I was about to press the call button. I hadn't been in contact with him at all since the divorce, so I hadn't even thought about his name still being in my phone book. I definitely didn't want to deal with Alec, so I decided to ignore the call. But the phone kept ringing. After about 3 rings, it stopped, only to start ringing again without a pause.
What's this? Does he still have something to complain about?
In no time, the missed calls had piled up to dozens. At this point, it's hard to tell who the stalker is. Checking my call history, I realized a colleague from work had also called. Interrupted by Alec's incessant ringing, it was resulting in a missed call notification. While fiddling with my phone, scared of accidentally making a call, I noticed a message from my colleague amidst the missed calls and managed to check it.
The candle service.
It seems the bride, Chanel, is upset because of my absence. The candle service was one of Chanel's special requests. She had tried to gather all the guests who had stepped out for a toilet break or a smoke, causing a small commotion when I didn't return. I had messaged my colleague that I had to leave due to an emergency, but I could imagine Chanel wouldn't be satisfied with that explanation. The voicemail Alec left was, "I thought you were stalking me. If you were really a guest, you could have just said so.
I'm not mad, so just come back already. It'd be a waste not to eat the cake."
The condescending tone of his hurried message made me even less inclined to return.
What a hassle. With hundreds of people there, it wouldn't matter if I was missing.
I vented my true feelings, thinking no one was around. Then, a car pulled into the parking lot. To my surprise, a woman in a pure white dress got out of the driver's seat. She looked exactly like a bride. Normally, brides get ready at the venue, so this was clearly unusual. I couldn't help but stare at her. Noticing my gaze, the woman gave me a kind smile.
Thank you for attending our wedding today. What?
Misunderstanding, I forced a smile and explained. Oh, I'm a colleague of the bride currently at the reception. Are you about to have your ceremony? Lovely dress.
Thank you. I've been looking forward to this day. Congratulations.
Despite the pleasant atmosphere, I felt a sense of unease. I remembered Chanel bragging various things about the wedding. How she requested the highest quality catering, a dress by a famous designer. Her bragging wouldn't end and our break times were completely consumed by those topics. And one of them was the exclusive booking of the wedding venue. Normally, up to 6 couples could hold their ceremonies in a day. However, Chanel insisted on having her special day all to herself. I wondered if the woman had gotten the date wrong. The happily looking woman confided a secret, saying, actually. Hearing this, I headed back to the venue I had just been kicked out of. It seemed like it would be more entertaining than any special performance. At the entrance of the banquet hall, Alec and Chanel were having an argument. Noticing me, Alec hurried over.
I've been waiting for you forever.
Chanel, having been informed by Alec, glared at me.
So you know Alec? I heard you used to like him and followed him around. Saying you can't celebrate the marriage of someone you used to like and leaving? That's something middle or high schoolers would do. How inconsiderate.
Chanel, it was Alec who told me to leave.
Don't be annoying. Can you not call my husband by his first name?
Alec avoided my gaze as soon as I looked at him. As if a casual lie could cover the truth.
Right, I should have been more considerate. After all, Alec and I divorced over 10 years ago. Excuse me? What did you say?
Chanel tilted her head in confusion. Obviously, Alec hadn't shared any inconvenient truths with her. Alec tried to silence me, but I spoke up anyway.
What do you mean? Alec and I were married.
Chanel's eyes widened in shock. Alec, sensing danger, shrank back like a scared kitten.
What? You used to be married? I didn't know about this. Unbelievable.
Before the wedding, Chanel often spoke about her ideal partner.
Someone with fair skin, a model-like face, who would grant all my wishes like a prince. And of course, he has to be utterly devoted to me.
A wish list that seemed pulled straight from a fairy tale. I had heard she had dated twice in the past, but she broke up with them because they merely glanced at another girl, screaming betrayal at the slightest provocation. She would never accept a history of divorce. Then Chanel, giddy with the notion of having found her Prince Charming, had married Alec after a brief courtship. It was Chanel's mistake for not looking into him more, despite her usual insistence on details. Alec hurried to cover up.
Chanel, it's not what you think. I did marry her, but it was a youthful mistake. A folly of youth, you know? And to prove it, we split up after about a year.
He tried to put his arm around Chanel's shoulder, only to be shrugged off.
I had pretty much forgotten she existed, and now I'm all about you, Chanel. It's actually her who's been bothering me. She kept staring at me during the ceremony, and it was really creepy. Come on, Chanel, Melissa is the annoying one. You know I wouldn't be interested in someone like her. Trust me.
Chanel's lips were clenched so tightly that they bled. She seemed to be holding back her anger.
I get it, Melissa is the annoying one. I mean, you knew it was Alec as soon as you saw the invitation, right? Did you dress up all fancy because you thought you'd see Alec? Talk about creepy. Thinking there might be a chance?
I had become the common enemy of Alec and Chanel. By berating me, Chanel seemed to have felt better and snuggled up to Alec artificially.
She's my stalker. Probably got mad knowing I was getting married. Lately, she's been following me around. It's been truly creepy. It was too much not matter how much she likes me. Stalking and then showing up at the wedding thinking there's a chance is just too creepy.
They laughed together. A vulgar laughter that didn't suit the beautiful bride and groom.
Melissa, I'm sorry.
I know it must be hard to see me and Alec so happy, but it's unthinkable for someone to leave in the middle of the ceremony. Please, stay till the end to get over your feelings for Alec. I was ridiculed thoroughly. I couldn't possibly celebrate their union now. Chanel, I really didn't know the groom was Alec. Save your pointless act. It's true. Because he had a different last name back then. Chanel, not understanding, was carefully enlightened by me. He was Alec Brown before. Now, Alec Taylor. Do you understand why? Alec was the first to pounce on me. Not that we were getting along, but Chanel, with a look of anger, pulled us apart. This made it easier to continue. Alec has been married and divorced several times after divorcing me, even taking his wives' last names. Alec yelled, "Shut up," but was immobilized by Chanel, who had thrown her arms around him. Chanel's grip tightened, and Alec began to moan in pain. Alec's history of divorces wasn't just once. It appears he had been married and divorced at least 5 times. Knowing the truth, Chanel's grip tightened around Alec to the point it seemed she might be breaking his spine. Alec couldn't even make a sound. To those unaware of the turmoil, they might appear as a passionately embracing bride and groom. The banquet staff, previously too intimidated to intervene, finally managed to stop Chanel. Chanel's fiery temper had evidently left the staff terrified. But they seemed to realize Alec's life was in danger if they didn't act. After a bit of coughing, Alec turned his fury on me.
Melissa. Secretly following me around and digging up unnecessary information. You're beyond what you call a stalker.
Although Alec's bloodshot eyes were frightening, I kept my composure. Come on, it's your wedding. Let's keep it calm. I looked towards the lobby and saw that she was prepared.
Alec, congratulations on your wedding.
I clapped loudly. Perplexed Alec and Chanel watched with a perplexed expression. Then a woman in her wedding dress approached. The shyly smiling woman was far more charming as a bride than Chanel. While I was blessing them with a full smile, Alec stepped back with a pale face.
Isabel.
The woman who had arrived at the venue in a wedding dress was named Isabel. According to her, she had been dating Alec until a few months ago. They even got engaged. But he broke up with her suddenly without giving a reason, and Isabel couldn't accept it. Upon investigating, she discovered he had another fiancé and was repeatedly getting married. Her unceasing smile in this situation was eerie. Though skeptical of her story at first, the evidence of their relationship and the detailed records of Alec's past she provided made disbelief impossible. I've always been by Alec's side. I know everything about him.
So the stalker was you?
Alec had actually been a victim of stalking. That's why he mistook me for the stalker. While Chanel and the staff were stunned, Isabel pulled Alec's arm. In place of the frozen staff, I pushed open the heavy doors to the banquet hall. Inside, the guests were tired of the lengthy and dull entertainment. The newly returned bride and groom were greeted with huge applause.
Thank you, everyone, thank you.
Isabel led Alec through the venue. Isabel radiated a happiness aura from her entire being. Alec, now utterly soulless, barely managed to stand. A light push on his index finger might topple him. Gradually, the applause thinned, and the room grew so quiet you wouldn't think it held hundreds of guests.
Who are you?
Finally, Chanel shouted. Lifting her dress, she stormed towards Isabel. A beautiful bride and an ugly bride faced off. I was the one promised to marry Alec. Chanel pulled on Alec's right arm, while Isabel clung to his left.
Lies.
It's not a lie. I presented the evidence Isabel had prepared to Chanel. Even after seeing it, Chanel screamed, "It's a lie," and threw the evidence away. A guest picked it up, and a game of telephone started spontaneously. While Isabel and Chanel fought, the whole venue quickly became aware of the situation. Even as the staff and both families tried to intervene, Chanel was too agitated to be stopped. Isabel laughed madly. Of course, the wedding couldn't continue, and the guests were practically kicked out. Alec, notably, had fainted on the floor. An incensed Chanel, not noticing Alec, had collapsed, impressively trampled over his face. Isabel vanished after seemingly fulfilling her revenge. Though Chanel had been cheated on by Alec, she received no sympathy from anyone. Her disgrace at the wedding was too much to elicit even pity. Chanel came from a wealthy family, the only daughter. She dropped out of college and couldn't keep a job, so she was introduced to work at my company. Her only computer skill was internet browsing. Ignoring her simple tasks, she would bother us, busy with our work, endlessly bragging and complaining. A perfect example of self-centeredness. The forced attendance at her wedding, and our lack of fondness for her from the start, made sympathy impossible. Even Chanel's parents weren't on her side. Apparently, many guests were business contacts of her parents, who were furious at being embarrassed by her. Honestly, at least her parents could have defended her. But like Chanel, they must prioritize themselves above all. Like Chanel, they must prioritize themselves above all. Ironically, Alec should be thankful for the outcome, given he was supposed to be beaten up by Chanel. Yet for some reason, Alec showed up at my house, accusing me of stalking, when now it seemed he was the stalker.
It's your fault. You past women ruined the wedding.
Despite everything that happened, Alec is living with Chanel as planned, and yet he's complaining.
You're happy you're married to Chanel, aren't you? No way. She's worthless. What? But you chose Chanel for her personality, didn't you?
Well, yeah.
I overlooked her looks and chose her for her wealth.
That's a quality, right?
Her family is well known around here for being rich. But if her family's money isn't coming in because she's estranged from them, there's no point in being with her.
That's what I thought. I wondered if two self-centered people might get along, but normally, they'd clash. Alec was just pretending to be a prince, hiding his true self. He often complained about how boring the countryside was during our marriage, but he mentioned one good thing about it. The culture of respecting men still existed. Indeed, Alec was treated as an honored guest at my family's home, so he got carried away. Moreover, he said rural women are simple. He hasn't grown in over a decade. No matter how much anger I show, he comes begging to me with a completely changed attitude.
Melissa, do something. She's put GPS on my phone because she suspects me of cheating, and I'm locked up at home when I'm not at work. Actually, she quit her job and has time, so she follows me around and watches me sometimes. It's crazy, right?
That's crazy.
Right? She's the one who's crazy.
But it can't be helped. Alec, you would cheat right away if she didn't do that, wouldn't you? It's natural for him to be suspected, as he has no credibility. Alec plays the victim, but he is undoubtedly the perpetrator.
I can't even take a breather, let alone cheat. I hate this. I want to escape. Melissa, help me.
Alec is nothing but a blemish on my life. Even his attempts to evoke pity is just repulsive. Just as I was getting fed up, a screech like a beast's cry echoed from afar. However, the source of the cry, charging like a gorilla, was Chanel.
What are you doing here? How? You were out and I even left my phone at home.
Chanel pushed the pale-faced Alec aside and whispered a warning to me.
The GPS is also in his wallet and on his keychain, so I'm always watching him. Don't even think about stealing my husband.
I could imagine Alec wanting to cry over such suffocating living conditions. Still, I have no sympathy for a habitual cheater.
I wouldn't steal him. Be happy with Alec.
I answered with a smile. Chanel tried to take Alec back, hugging him, but he stubbornly resisted. I don't want to go back. Come on, Melissa. Deep down, you still love me, don't you? His confidence was baffling.
Love you? Impossible. I'm married too, you know.
The front door quietly opened. I had asked Stuart, my current husband, to wait inside, feeling awkward about introducing my ex to him. But he couldn't stay away any longer due to the noise outside.
Eek!
Alec shrieked at the sight of the towering Stuart looking down on him. Trembling as if he'd encountered a man-eating bear, I teased him for fun.
This man is being persistent. Can you do something?
Stuart's eyebrows twitched at my words. Just that was enough for Alec to cling to Chanel and make a quick escape. Alec, frightened by the gentle bear, never showed up in front of me again. Whether it's because of the bear or he's sticking to Chanel in their newlywed life, I don't know. Thus, my peaceful days returned. I'm not good with confrontations, Melissa. I didn't know what to do to help when you were in trouble. Sorry.
It's okay. You're protecting me, just being by my side, Stuart. Even with this look, there comes advantages. I always felt my size and intimidating presence were a flaw, but it turns out, just a glare can protect my family when needed. Not bad at all.
Stuart and I shared a smile. Then Leon, wielding a toy sword, bursted in.
I'll defeat the dinosaur.
Suddenly, it was time for a play fight. Stuart is always casted as a dinosaur. Ah, I'm defeated.
Got you. Mama, I came to save you. I defeated the scary dinosaur.
Stuart effortlessly lifted Leon onto his shoulders.
Brave sir, I won't cause trouble anymore. Please make me your ally. Okay. Let's protect Mama together. Yay!
I have two reliable heroes by my side. The sight of Big Stuart and little Leon playing together is something I cherish. I want to protect this simple daily happiness.
Dropping out and living off a pension, isn't that just like a dead weight who doesn't understand the struggles of the young? Caught in a fire and still not a bit spirited. Really, society's dead weight lives the longest, huh?
Tiana, my eldest son's wife, said this laughing, without a hint of malice. It was the last straw for me. Don't think getting disowned is the end of it. Divine retribution will come one day. Just you wait. My name is Violet, I'm 75. When did it start? The words I mutter when I get moving became.
Here we go.
Ouch. Sometimes, I say them even when I'm not in pain. Back when my body issues were fewer than now, and I had just turned 60. A shocking piece of news landed between my recently retired husband, Cody, and me. Our eldest son, Ethan, not particularly bright and with kindness as his only trait, was getting married. Ethan wanted a family meeting, and Cody and I joyfully agreed. Who could have chosen our unremarkable Ethan? On the day of the meeting, Tiana, a well-dressed woman, appeared at our house. Not especially beautiful or flashy. But her behavior was elegant and refined, perhaps due to good upbringing, leaving Cody and me speechless. You didn't just bring some secretary pretending to be your girlfriend, did you? I couldn't help but ask Ethan. But as we listened to them, her background became clear. She was the daughter of a chain of Italian restaurants. With two older brothers, she wasn't expected to take over the family business. But if something happened to her brothers, Ethan might have to step in. I wondered if Ethan could handle such a responsibility, but the warm atmosphere between him and Tiana made it seem possible. They were more in love than I imagined. We approved their marriage, and they wed. Everything seemed perfect. Then one day, Tiana called.
Oh, Tiana, what's up?
Calling so suddenly.
Violet. I heard from Ethan yesterday. Is it true that Cody dropped out? Yes, that's right. He was the youngest, and our parents couldn't afford to send him to school. Why do you ask?
Dropping out was common and not unusual. And Ethan's parents' education had nothing to do with his marriage. I optimistically failed to understand the intention behind her question.
And you're not working now, right? Just retired. Enjoying a leisurely pension life.
I replied with a laugh, but the air over the phone turned heavy.
Tiana, something wrong? I'm a bit confused. So, you're saying he never really accomplished anything in society and now just lives off a pension?
What? Both Cody and I had worked and paid taxes. I didn't know if we contributed to society, but we hadn't been a burden. I didn't understand her point, but I felt looked down upon. Finally, that day, she said, "Let me think about this," and hung up. Wondering if I should tell Ethan about this, I consulted with Cody. Tiana's intentions aren't clear, and it might be a misunderstanding. Let's wait and see. That's what happened. 2 months later, Ethan and Tiana visited us during a long vacation. I hoped that Tiana had misunderstood something about the dropout issue. For their visit, I prepared seasonal ingredients and fancy seafood. But what's this? Tiana, who came to help in the kitchen, looked at the ingredients and got furious. There were no known allergies, and serving shrimp and crab wasn't unusual. I had no idea why she was so angry.
Who decided to have a meal like this?
Well, it was Cody.
He did it because you guys were coming over. He is on a pension, right? Living comfortably off the big taxes we worked hard to pay. Please don't indulge in luxuries like everyone else.
Hey! That's no way to talk. We don't even indulge in luxuries normally, and we've been paying into our pension all this time.
That's the problem with you people. You benefit from everything, from healthcare to pensions, while young people like us work hard, knowing our future pensions will be almost non-existent. If you have money for luxuries, donate it to the younger generation.
While I stood there dumbfounded, she sighed again.
In my family, my parents and brothers all went to college, studied hard, and provide dedicated service to society and our customers every day. And they earn well, of course. Cody, he worked in a factory, right? Didn't study much and settled for low wages, just moving his body around, and his future was secured. How nice. We work hard but never feel it's enough for our efforts.
I couldn't tell if we were indeed better off than Tiana's family unless I compared our incomes. But, regardless, it wasn't fair for her to say all this. Does she even understand how the pension system works? I wondered. If you have so many complaints, then leave. I was about to say that when.
What's all this noise about?
Cody, who should have been at the grocery store with Ethan, appeared from behind. Cody. Tears welled up in my eyes, maybe because of the harsh words thrown at him. He had always worked hard for our family. He even gave up school for us. He's a respectable man who's been working tirelessly for us. He doesn't deserve to be looked down on like this.
Cody, can you please stop living so luxuriously? Huh?
With a haughty attitude and arms crossed, Tiana glared at him. This woman, she's still mocking Cody.
If you're living off a pension, please lead a modest life or save for your demise. We don't want our hard-earned money going to people like you.
Tiana, what's wrong?
I'm not living luxuriously or anything. No. Just preparing all these fine ingredients is a nuisance. We can afford this with our own money.
It's not like they're high-end ingredients. I just thought it'd be nice for today. If you're feeling uncomfortable.
That's not it. It makes me sick that people like you, who never studied properly and just continued a fool's job, live off pensions and eat like this.
I thought to myself, factory work varies, and without people manufacturing, you wouldn't have the car you came in. But I stayed silent. Nothing I said would get through to her. But Cody reacted differently.
I tried to be understanding because you're Ethan's wife, but this is too much.
I paled, realizing he was angry. He rarely gets angry, maybe once in every 8 years, more rarely than the Olympics. If he exploded now, Tiana would be in trouble. That's when it happened. From the back room, I heard an explosion and the sound of something collapsing.
Dad, Mom, Tiana. There's a fire in the back. Get out quick.
Guided by Ethan, who rushed and drenched with water, we managed to escape the house without harm. Exhausted, we all watched our home engulfed in flames.
It's good that everyone's safe.
Ethan muttered. Yes. I replied. It seemed like an electrical fault in the neighbor's house had caused the fire, which spread to ours. Almost everything except the second floor was burned, and the house was unlivable.
What a long vacation this turned out to be. What do we do now?
Cody mused. Yes. Watching us, Tiana said.
We're not going to take care of you.
We, who had not even thought of asking for such a thing, exchanged glances in surprise. What is this kid talking about?
When times like this come, isn't it like this? You old folks living on pensions don't have money, so you say, you're the eldest son, so you should take us in, right? I read it on the internet.
You wouldn't say something like that, would you, Cody?
Of course not. I wouldn't bother Tiana or Ethan with such things.
Cody, calmed by the fire and now exhausted, nodded. Ethan watched our exchange with a solemn expression. I was afraid to ask what he thought.
Just so you know, don't try to get closer to us just because our house burned down. Tiana, what's gotten into you? We never said we'd do anything like that.
Cody continued.
That's right.
He agreed with my words. It seemed like the anger was flaring up again.
People with no brains can't imagine what others might think. After all, how can you, living on pensions, rebuild your lives with no education?
Tiana laughed mockingly. I couldn't deny it. I wasn't sure about the cost of house repairs, and how much would the fire insurance cover. I had just heard that if it's a fire spread from somewhere else, suing the responsible party isn't an option. Beyond education, there aren't many places a 60-year-old can work.
Violet, you're just a high school graduate, but dropout Cody will just be a burden to you.
Tiana said this with a smile, seemingly without any malice. Anger welled up inside me.
You're still lively despite being caught in a fire. Society's burdens live the longest.
Before Cody could grab Tiana by the collar in response to her words, my slap should have exploded. But my slap didn't hit Tiana, it struck Ethan's left cheek.
Ethan! Why are you defending her? You're making a mockery of Dad.
Cody restrained me as I cried out, and Ethan stepped forward as if to shield Tiana.
I'm sorry,
Ethan muttered, looking down.
Does marrying mean your wife is more important? Are we, your family, nothing to you?
It's not like that. But I love her too, so whether she's wrong or right, I can't choose. My dear Ethan, whose only good trait was his kindness, had become merely indecisive. I had carried and raised Ethan with care. I understood his feelings. I would have liked to support his kind heart if possible. But I just couldn't get along with Tiana anymore.
That's enough. Dad and I will cut ties with her. We won't see you either.
I couldn't bring myself to say cut ties with Ethan too. My weakness was apparent. I might be called pathetic, but I just couldn't bear to easily sever ties with Ethan. I never imagined spending the last years of my life like this. My body trembled, whether from fear, anxiety, or the excitement of my outburst. And so, my husband and I, and Ethan and his wife, started walking separate paths. 10 years later, after various circumstances, we were living with Cedric, our second son, and his wife. 2 days after the fire, when Cedric was supposed to visit, I contacted him. "Why don't you live with us?" He said it so casually, and we've been living together ever since. Cedric's wife, Caddy, had been unwell since giving birth and struggled with household chores. Then came our house fire. It goes without saying that Cedric's suggestion to live with us had an ulterior motive. But in exchange for doing household chores, living rent-free was a good deal for us. Even if the household chores meant playing with the grandchildren or cooking, being able to see them grow up every day was a reward for us. We shared household duties with Caddy, and we took over entirely when she felt unwell, so there was no inconvenience at all. Living with us might actually be easier for them than when it was just the two of us. I never really minded or felt dissatisfied, but Cody isn't much of a housekeeper. After cutting ties with Tiana and leaving our burnt house, I felt a daily happiness, as if the words disposal of unnecessary items, huge success, were floating in my head. Then, one day, after finishing dinner and about to serve cookies I made with my grandchildren, the doorbell rang. "Hello?" Caddy answered in her usual manner.
Help!
And from the monitor came a voice. Those grave words made us brace for some emergency.
Tiana?
Caddy looked bewildered, alternating glances between the monitor and us. Eh? Tiana? I couldn't believe it and looked at the monitor, where Ethan and his wife stood. "What are you doing here?" I couldn't help but ask. "Please, we apologize for everything in the past, just help our company." The sight of Ethan and his wife asking for help through the monitor caught even me off guard. Worried the neighbors might think oddly of Cedric's family, I hurriedly opened the door.
"What's this all about? Why so sudden?"
I asked. Behind me stood Cody, and a little further back, Cedric watched us with concern, protecting his children and Caddy. "Our family business is about to go bankrupt."
"The family business, United Capital Holdings? You've expanded since your marriage, it should be fine, right?"
Indeed, her family business had grown rapidly since their marriage, now a respectable corporation. I knew from the newspapers a few years back that Ethan had joined the management, following her grandfather's wish to keep it family-operated. But at this moment, I pretended not to know, although I was fully aware of their imminent bankruptcy and its reasons. Of course. They had to come to our house, and I could barely suppress a laugh. No. I mustn't laugh. I can't divulge details, but expanding so much has backfired. Can you help us without asking anything?
Let me guess, you hired manager candidates thinking anyone would be fine as long as they were college graduates, and they did whatever they wanted? I know all about it.
Cody was the one who reacted to her words. Like me, he, who knew everything, couldn't completely hide his amusement. "So you knew, Mr. Gourmet Iron Man," Tiana said, looking dejected.
"Since living here, Cedric often takes me out to eat. Starting a blog turned out to be popular, what a hassle."
Cody laughed. Since moving in with Cedric and his family, Cody, who loved food, was frequently taken out to various restaurants by Cedric. He started reviewing the flavors on a blog, which became popular for its honest depiction of minor local eateries. Now, he even writes articles for magazines, introducing recommended gourmet maps. Gourmet Ironman was his pen name. His articles were so influential that celebrities often visited the restaurants he reviewed. Cody, once mocked as a dropout living on a pension, now earned his income solely through his talent for writing and popularity, regardless of his educational background. "I saw you entering a restaurant I know and realized you are the Gourmet Iron Man. Please, Cody, I apologize for the past, but can you feature our restaurant on your blog or in the media?" Ethan added, "I know it's too convenient, but I'm asking too." I had once cared deeply for Ethan, no doubt about it. But after 10 years without contact, their return now, trying to salvage only the good parts, made me feel nauseous beyond disgust. It's way too convenient. Even if you apologize, your mindset hasn't changed, has it? We're still living on pensions, you know? Can you still apologize despite that? Tiana responded to my words. "I can apologize." She responded immediately. "Your pride and beliefs are so flimsy. You insulted us over something so trivial that you can apologize so easily? That is. Isn't it because people like that are in management that the store's business is getting worse? Always about money, no passion in what they do. Say whatever you want to me. I'll take it as my punishment. But please, the article about our store." At that moment, "Well, that's a bit of a problem," Cody said. "What?" exclaimed Tiana. "Didn't your family also runs a Japanese restaurant called Sakura besides Italian place, Ruble D?" "Yes." "And the ramen place, Ramen Master, right?" "Yes, but what does that have to do with anything?" "I knew about Ruble D since you got married, but I didn't know much about the managing company, so I ended up writing bad reviews for the other places too. Just the day before yesterday.
What?
She was frozen by Cody's revelation. The magazine asked me to write a critical piece on these places. They said they've been getting bad reviews lately and wanted to feature them. So I wrote exactly what I saw. I even spread rumors about the poor attitude of the managers, which I heard from another writer during my visit. The ramen place served bowls with fingers in them, and the Japanese place lacked cleanliness. Some dishes were served cold, as if they were frozen. Isn't that a bit much? I also heard about this from Cody, saying, I might have written something bad about Tiana's family. That's how I learned about her family situation. It was more of a disclosure of facts than bad-mouthing. What else was there? Cody muttered as Tiana started to tremble.
Did you write about everything?
It was my way of showing care. I thought it was unfair for customers to suffer losses. I've submitted the article today. Hearing about the submission, Tiana, who was clinging to Cody, and Ethan both collapsed weakly on the spot.
You're kidding, right?
She murmured. Education doesn't really matter in the end. If we take care of things one at a time, everyone gets equal results, and even small talents can grow with effort. Like Cody. Your family only hires college grads, which isn't bad, but you can't judge someone's character by a resume. You look down on people too much. Did you learn something? At my words, Tiana contorted her face and apologized. I'm sorry. She must have realized how shameful her behavior had been towards someone she had once cut ties with. She apologized and left. Ethan also said, I'm truly sorry for forgetting the kindness of those who raised me and for constantly choosing the wrong path. And with tears, he followed Tiana. I wished they had realized this sooner but didn't say it aloud. That's your path. Keep going. Even though we cut ties, a parent's heart remains. After Cody's article was published, it became a hot topic online, and Tiana's family's store lost customers. Reports said they were using expired meat and mislabeling products. It became apparent they were a conglomerate of scandals and closed all stores within a year. Bankruptcy. From what I hear on internet forums, Ethan and Tiana divorced after that incident. Tiana struggles to find work outside the food industry and lives alone in a cheap apartment. Ethan was seen working part-time at a discount store near their old home. There were arguments heard from their home before the bankruptcy, and their marriage deteriorated as the business did. Both cut off ties, and though I can't confirm the truth, I hope Ethan learns what's truly right for him through these hardships. If we ever meet again, no, I'm still too angry. They should suffer and learn from society. As for me, I've recovered from an illness a few years ago and am now living happier and healthier, all thanks to the dedicated support of Cedric and his wife, and the joy of my grandchildren. And most of all, it's thanks to my precious husband who heals me. Caddy has grown much stronger and is now a powerful mom. Caddy says, it's starting to look like you. That said, I was supposed to be ladylike. It's strange. I do see similarities in the way we scold our grandchildren or when I'm admonishing Cedric. It's strange how non-blood-related family members can resemble each other. I want to continue watching over Cedric and his family. Since recovering, I've started going on walking dates 3 times a week to a nearby park with Cody. It's a small joy, but it feels like returning to my youth, and I'm happy. I'll keep taking care of my health and enjoy this once-in-a-lifetime life.
You're replaceable. You're fired.
Elaine, the president's daughter, spat out at me. I had reached my breaking point. Without retorting to her words, I quietly accepted my dismissal. Understood. If I must leave, then so be it. Emotion had drained from me. I responded in a voice lacking any spirit.
Well, goodbye then.
She waved at me, her face brightening with relief. I started preparing to leave the company I had once been grateful for. Then, I shall resign. On my last day, I went to say goodbye to Elaine. It was already too late for her. Not only was I leaving, but I also decided to leave a parting gift for the company.
Would you reconsider your resignation?
Elaine asked me, tearfully. Ridiculous. She was the one who fired me. I am Bonnie, 40 years old. Living alone in urban, I'm single and have devoted my life to my job. My parents live in another state, quietly enjoying their retirement. Both my parents were salespeople, which probably influenced me. From a young age, I was good at negotiating and getting along with people, whether getting extra prizes from the candy store or winning over my classmates' mothers for fancy birthday gifts. I had always wanted to use my strengths in a sales career. Eventually, as an adult, I worked in various sales roles before joining this staffing agency through a mid-career hire. In this competitive industry, our small company struggled to sustain profits without contracts from large corporations. Amidst that, I was always the top in new contracts, labeled as the company's promising newcomer, which became my confidence and success. However, I also faced persistent harassment from Elaine, the president's daughter. She had once been in sales and enjoyed popularity as the president's daughter, but now, working in administration, she seemed to take her lack of fulfillment out on me with relentless jealousy-driven harassment. I'm off now. I would routinely report before leaving the office to visit clients. That day, I had a packed schedule with client appointments, so I quickly finished lunch with coffee at the office before heading out.
Bonnie, if you use the hot water from the pot for your coffee, at least refill it before you leave.
Elaine chided me.
Sorry, I'm in a rush. Could you top it up for me?
She asked as she came to refill the water boiler, part of her administrative duties. I hadn't used much water, and I made sure to use it before everyone's lunchtime, so there was still plenty left.
Honestly, everyone complains that there's always less water after you use it.
She griped.
Really? I don't use much, but I'll be more careful.
I replied. With an appointment waiting, I couldn't linger and quickly left the office. During a meeting with a client, an email was sent to all employees from Elaine. It read,
"To all staff, for the pleasant use of communal resources, please adhere to the rules. Recently, some inconsiderate employee has been using a lot of the pot's water without refilling it. Although it's just one person, we ask everyone to use the company's resources responsibly."
I thought, this is about me, isn't it? The email implied it was just one person, so if a witch hunt started at the office, Elaine would surely point fingers at me. Ridiculous. I still remember her poor attitude from my first greeting at the company. She must be really bored to bother with such petty harassment. I had no choice but to get used to her antics. After finishing the day's appointments, I returned to the office to submit my end-of-day report. It was past 7 p.m. Usually, no one is around at the headquarters at this time, but Elaine was still there.
Oh, Elaine, you're still here?
Wow, Bonnie, you were still working? She asked, clearly surprised as I approached.
Sorry to startle you.
Yes, I'm surprised. Were you really working this late, or were you out drinking?
I wasn't drinking. It just got late because I had many places to visit.
What I wanted to ask was why she was still at the office at this hour. But I couldn't say that. After all, being the president's daughter, she had a habit of bullying others by exploiting their weaknesses.
I'm heading home now, Elaine. Don't stay too late yourself.
Just go home already. Sigh, another day drained by unnecessary issues. But something was bothering me. I couldn't help but wonder why Elaine was staying so late, and why she got puzzled as I spoke to her.
Bonnie, can I talk to you for a moment?
Elaine asked.
What is it?
I replied.
It's almost the end of the month, right? I need to check something about the new client acquisitions.
She said,
Okay. I'll be back at the office by 5 p.m.
The next day, as I came to the office as usual, what Elaine had mentioned felt unnatural. Why would an admin staff be concerned about the sales department's client numbers? That's typically the responsibility of the sales manager, not admin. The day was packed with appointments again. A company I regularly visit wanted to start a new project and needed staff, so they asked our company for assistance, resulting in another new contract for me. That client is a major call center expanding rapidly, and my strong relationship with their representative means they contact me whenever they need staffing support. Back at the office, after reporting the new contract to my boss, I went to meet Elaine, who had been waiting.
I'm back. You mentioned something about a client this morning. What's up?
I asked.
Bonnie, are you securing these new contracts by forming deep relationships with the clients?
She inquired. What? I was taken aback by her unexpected question. No, of course not. I stammered. Is that so?
Well, if that's the case, then it's fine.
Is that all?
Yes, that's it.
She replied. It felt weird. She waited all this time just to ask me that? While I was out working hard, she seemed to have nothing better to do. I don't feel comfortable about your question. Is something wrong? I asked. Nothing's wrong. She said, her expression mocking. Then why ask such a thing?
I find it strange. Someone like you getting so many clients.
She said. To me, it wasn't strange at all. It was due to my effort and expertise. What do you mean by someone like me? I asked.
You don't seem like the sales type. I mean, with my looks and privileged background, I fit the sales role, but you don't, Bonnie.
She implied. Sure, Elaine was attractive and had the president as her parent, seemingly living a charmed life. However, that's not what makes someone good at sales. Are you suggesting that because of my looks, I'm getting clients through personal relationships? I questioned.
I didn't say that directly.
She laughed. Feeling personally attacked, I left the office, passing by the laughing Elaine. I was so upset, I cried all the way home. As the month end approached, it was time to report this month's new client acquisitions and progress. Today was the day for that meeting. I had worked hard this month. With referrals from a major company and new clients met through acquaintances, I had secured 3 contracts, feeling very satisfied with my performance. Some months are dry, but this month, I felt proud of my achievements.
This month I've acquired 3 new clients, bringing my total to 12.
It was my turn to report my performance, so I shared as usual. But then the room started buzzing.
What's going on?
I whispered to my colleague David, sitting next to me. He is a friendly guy I've been close with since we started together, and quietly filled me in.
The documents say something different. What?
I checked my papers and they matched what I had just reported. However, his copy showed my new client count as 0, with a note saying there were issues with my sales acquisition methods under investigation.
What's this? Let's talk about it later. We should continue the meeting.
David advised, so I followed his lead and got through the meeting. I asked him for more details afterwards.
Why were my documents different from everyone else's?
Elaine prepared them, so I'm not sure. At that point, I understood. It was harassment from her.
Elaine prepared them, I see.
I took the documents David had and went to confront Elaine. Elaine, I need to talk to you.
What's up? Don't look so scary.
She said, this document, what is it? It's false, right? This is too much, even for harassment. I found myself raising my voice at her without realizing it. I was that angry. Then she said something shocking.
Bonnie, do you know what happens when you talk to me like that?
What?
You're replaceable. You're fired.
She spat out. I felt myself crumbling, exhaustion washing over me. After a heated argument, I found myself saying, understood. I'll leave, then. The intense argument in the office had made me the talk of the company. Despite contributing so much, why was I facing this? But I had said I would leave. What about my living expenses starting tomorrow? That thought drained all my motivation. Deeply upset, I got a call from David, who was worried about me.
I didn't realize it was that serious, sorry. I couldn't back you up as your colleague. It's okay. Elaine's harassment has been ongoing since I joined. Still, the company will take a big hit losing someone with your clientele. Are you really quitting?
His words made me reconsider. But the opponent wasn't just any employee. She was the president's daughter, with considerable influence.
I guess so. I'm confident in my sales record, and I'll do sales at another company. That's all I have.
I see.
But here's a personal piece of advice: don't just quit. If you're leaving anyway, why not pay her back? She's not that great, even if she's the president's daughter.
Hearing that, I thought, maybe he's right. Being a competitive person, I couldn't just leave after all the harassment from Elaine, as he suggested. I thought about what kind of payback I could give during my remaining time before resigning. I also decided to start looking for a new job.
Thanks, David. Your words sparked a great idea. Plus, I'm going to start job hunting.
I told him.
That's good to hear. Personally, I wish you'd stay, but if you're leaving, it might be fun to give Elaine a bit of trouble as a parting gift.
He said.
You might be right.
I mused. After hanging up with David, I dove into my job search and decided to use my remaining paid leave. I had a lot accumulated due to rarely taking time off. I went to Elaine to tell her about my plans. Elaine, thanks for deciding to fire me the other day. She seemed surprised by my attitude, probably expecting me to be depressed.
What's with that attitude?
She asked. Did you think I'd be down?
No, but you're tougher than I thought.
Yes, I am. By the way. I cut her off mid-sentence to tell her I'd be using my accrued leave.
Paid leave? I won't allow it. You should just leave quickly since you're fired.
Is she an idiot? She doesn't even realize the problem with her statement. Do you not know? You can't just fire someone easily, and you can't deny paid leave without a special reason.
Fine, take it then.
She relented easily. It wasn't as satisfying as I hoped, but I planned to use my leave to execute a great idea. Thank you. I'll come back to the office on my last day to say goodbye.
Why bother with that attitude? You don't need to come back.
I looked her in the eyes and gave her a sly smile.
Just wait and see, Elaine. You'll be in for a surprise.
I started to feel a bit excited. I then scheduled appointments to say goodbye to all our clients. I wasn't using my leave to rest, but to execute a plan that would lead to my next move. I decided to use all 30 days of my leave for this purpose and as payback to Elaine. I received regretful responses from many clients. When I explained my resignation to our biggest client, they were indignant.
If you leave, we'll end our dealings with your company and shift our business to wherever you go.
They said. I didn't need to be honest with clients, but I wanted them to stop dealing with my soon-to-be former company. That turned out to be more effective than I imagined, with all clients reacting the same way. I had to admit, it was a brilliant idea. Imagining Elaine's future distress made me feel quite relieved already. One day, while I was using my paid leave, Elaine called my cell phone.
Bonnie, all the clients you were handling are suddenly ending their contracts with us. Did something happen?
I don't know anything about that. I feigned ignorance. She probably didn't imagine I was contacting clients during my leave. She seemed too nonchalant.
It's strange. It's not like they would stop dealing with our company just because you left, right?
Well, I was just a representative. My leaving shouldn't influence our company's contracts that much.
I know that. But it's strange. One after another, they're ending the contracts. Probably due to the recession.
She mused. I almost laughed at how clueless she was. My plan was working. Then, I received a call from a top client. They wanted to discuss a possible headhunting offer. An unexpected development. I decided to meet with them. First, I called David. Since it was his idea that inspired me, I thought I should tell him.
Hey, how are you? I'm fine. But I have something to report.
What happened?
Remember our talk? I came up with a plan. If I'm quitting anyway, why not get back at Elaine?
He seemed almost to say, that sounds fun. As he eagerly listened to the story,
I explained everything to our clients, and they all said they'd move their contracts to wherever I go next.
Bonnie, you're incredible, a real sales pro.
I'm grateful, but I feel a bit guilty, yet impressed with myself. Thanks to you, David.
Though I knew it complicated things for him, who was still at the company, I vowed to repay his kindness somehow. As I completed informing all clients, I decided to accept the headhunting offer. That company was a major client of my soon-to-be former company, so their contract cancellation was a significant blow. The company that headhunted me was setting up a new subsidiary in staffing and wanted me to handle their sales. With my new job secured, my mission was complete. On my last day, I went to the office to say goodbye. I've appreciated working with you. Elaine seemed off.
That's the least of our problems.
What happened? Turns out, all the projects I managed were cancelled at the request of the clients. The company was facing issues due to a significant drop in revenue.
Dad's so angry with me. What do I do now?
She collapsed, crying. What to do? This happened because you decided to fire me, right? I looked down at the crying her and said,
I'm being blamed by Dad and the sales director. They're saying it's my fault Bonnie was fired and that I should fix the sales drop. But I can't do that.
She was crying like a child, but I was satisfied with the payback I had achieved. Elaine, remember how you said my appearance wasn't right for sales and that I secured deals through personal relationships? Maybe this is karma.
I'm sorry for that. I did reflect on it afterward.
Reflect? Too late for that. I didn't feel any reflection from you. And that's not all you did to me. Maybe you should try contacting the clients yourself to recover the sales. Though I doubt you can.
I can't do sales.
She used to be in sales. What is she talking about? Weren't you in sales before? Oh, I see, you were removed because you couldn't do the job? She just sat there, her face a mess with tears, unable to speak. I had nothing more to do there, so I decided to leave.
Well, I'll be resigning now, Elaine. Can't you reconsider your resignation? Our company's sales are in trouble.
No, thank you. Thus, I left the company I had worked at for years. According to David, after my resignation, Elaine was blamed for the negative impact on sales caused by firing me. That affected the employees' bonuses and led to complaints, resulting in her being forced out of the company. She's been now idle at home. I was enjoying success at the new company that headhunted me. One day, I heard from David that he too had left the company. I explained the situation to my new company and managed to get him hired. We were working together again, striving side by side. It was fun to work with a former colleague, and we were gradually securing contracts with the clients I used to deal with at my previous company. Thanks to it, I won a newcomer award this month and felt very fulfilled.